Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. You're on a Dr. Finance Live podcast. We got an incredible guest today. We got Dr. John Gray, folks. I've been very excited to have Dr. John Gray here. I've been seeking him for well over a year. We've got him here today. We got an amazing guy. I mean, his book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, was one of the biggest books probably of the last century. Definitely one of the top experts in relationships. So let's welcome Dr. John Gray. Welcome, Dr. John. How are you, sir?
I'm very happy to be with you.
Nice to see you, John. So just to get started, we'll do a quick, maybe 30-second snapshot of yourself. You want to tell us about yourself for the next 30 seconds, and then we'll get into your story for maybe about 20 minutes or so, and then we got about 20 questions for you. So that's the format for today, and then we will we'll conclude.
Well, happily married for 34 years. My wife passed about 5 years ago. I'm remarried. I'm very happy in a relationship now. My daughter, Lauren, she had a baby recently, and I have two other daughters. They have two children, a grandfather. Just got back from a vacation in the Serengeti in Africa. Saw a lot of animals. Happy to be with you.
That's incredible. Thank you, Dr. John. Appreciate you. All right, so Dr. John, just to get started, the first thing I want to talk about is if we can just deep dive on your story. If you want to tell us a little about your story, we'll go way back, I guess. Where were you originally from?
Well, people know me as Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I forgot to mention that when I talked about how to improve communication, get what you want in your relationships. I never thought I would become a relationship expert. I didn't even know what I was going to become. I just grew up in a family of 6 kids, of 6 boys and 1 girl. My parents were happily married, lived in a nice neighborhood, grew up, did reasonably well in school, A's and B's. But I was an entrepreneur, always. 9 years old, I got a little printing press and I printed cards for people. Half card will travel. And I was making money doing that. I did yard work, got making money doing that. I was had a paper route, one of the biggest paper routes in the area that we lived in, and very entrepreneurial. I was in a rock band, played drums for a while, and went to Woodstock, got high. And when I crashed, I realized that getting high always had the result of going low, and I didn't want that. And my mother mentioned to me that the Beatles had said that they went to India and you could learn to meditate and you could get high and not crash. So that was around 18 years old. So I started transcendental meditation. It was a huge part of my life. In retrospect, I realized I was meditating most of my early childhood. I just didn't know what it was. My parents taught me yoga at 3 years old. We were all doing yoga as a family at 3 years old, just back in the 50s. So I had unusual parents. My mother had an esoteric bookstore, and my father studied mysticism and was also an oil man. So I kind of grew up in this, what's now called New Age ideas and whatever, alternative universal ideas. When I was a baby, my parents drove from Texas, Houston, Texas, all the way to California to have me be blessed by Yogananda. You know, the book Autobiography of a Yogi was a favorite of my mother and became a favorite of mine. So I was always interested in that sort of Eastern ideas, as well as the Western idea of being an entrepreneur. I went off at 18 years old after graduating from high school, went off to Switzerland, India to study with the Maharishi. I took all of his trainings and then became his one of his #1 students, I'll put it that way. I was his personal assistant. I helped develop his teacher training program, helped develop his university, which later became Maharishi International University. It started in Europe as the European Research University, where we researched meditation and the science of what he called the science of creative intelligence. So anyway, that was my background, and did that for 9 years. I was a celibate monk. It was an amazing time of my life where my priority was meditation, experiencing altered states of consciousness. We did the early research on brain coherence, on consciousness. In 3,600 centers, TM centers, they actually had my picture with my brain frequencies because I was like his #1 student. Meditation has been my passion. I taught it for 9 years, but then when you sort of learn something, you don't need to teach it anymore. I came out into the world and started teaching relationships. How did I go from a monk to teaching relationships? What's kind of a funny story is that when you haven't had sex or masturbate for 9 years, uh, circumstances arise where you start having sex. And I thought this was the greatest thing, enlightened sexuality. It's a bit different when you've been meditating for 9 years and then you start having sex. You realize that sex is not just sort of a pleasure seeking, but it's the opportunity to open the door to experience unbounded love. So I developed a course on my own at that time called Enlightened Sexuality, because for about a year, I just traveled around. I was a bit of a celebrity in the TM movement. So I had access to a lot of women who had admiration for me and had lots of sex. And before I'd have sex, I'd interview them. Now, I haven't had sex in 9 years, so help me understand your body. And because I'd been a monk, they were very happy to explain their body to me. And that was a revelation for me. Because, back in those days, this is back in the early 70s, late 70s, we didn't have a lot of books about sex. We certainly didn't have sex education. So hearing from many, many women I had sex with, I realized that it wasn't all the same. And things that I, as a man, didn't know, and they clearly didn't understand men. So I started teaching classes called Enlightened Sexuality, where people could discuss the differences when it comes to their experience of sex, what their pleasure is, what their desire is, what their motivations are, what are the ups, what are the downs. And ultimately it comes to, after teaching all of that for a few years, it turned into relationships, because sex by itself without love will burn out. It's not that interesting. You have to have new partners and so forth, but to sustain that passion in a relationship, you have to have love skills, communication skills. So then I started teaching communication skills as I was learning them, how to communicate in a way outside the bedroom so that inside the bedroom, the passion is still there. And that then gave rise to my becoming a counselor, becoming for about 9 years, counseling women primarily. Women are the ones who primarily go to therapy and counseling, and learning that women were very different from men. And that became very apparent to me, having been growing up in a family of males with one sister, 6 brothers, 6 boys, and then becoming a monk, only being with guys primarily. You understand men. I understood myself. Meditation is really all about self-reflection anyway. So understanding myself, and then counseling women for 9 years, realizing how different they are and how so many of the problems, not all problems, but so many of the problems between men and women have to do with men not understanding where women are coming from, and women not understanding men where they're coming from. So eventually it evolved into men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And from there, it became very, very successful. The #1 book of the decade of the 90s. I was teaching classes everywhere. I even did a Broadway show, because if I intend, it can be very, very funny in an audience, talking about my stories and the stories of my clients, how misinterpreting each other created unnecessary problems, and how we could learn from other people's challenges and problems and make our own relationships easier and better. So that's kind of an update of moving towards Men Are From Mars. And from there, became super successful, stayed on the New York Times #1 almost the whole time for about 6 years. And as that continued being on the list, I wrote several other books, Mars, Venus on a Date, for dating people, Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. That was probably the second most popular of all my books, because it's wonderful to have a very spiritual, positive, but very practical book on sex that couples could read together and improve their communication about sex, which will certainly improve the sexual experience, and understanding why passion goes away, how to keep the passion in a relationship, how to have win-win relationships. These are all like really important things to me, so that I can have a great relationship as well, which went on for 34 years. So there's a lot more to my journey, but those are the 2 of the bigger highlights. And then gradually the world changed. And as the world has changed, relationships have dramatically changed. And the changing of relationships today, it's not the same setting when I began. It was back in the 80s when it all started for me, teaching the relationship information. Romance was a key factor. It's like there was a song at the time, you don't bring me flowers anymore. What happens to the passion? What happens to the romance? And that was the 80s. Then the 90s came along. It was more about communication. People were like, he doesn't listen, he's not there for me, and so forth. And then the new millennium came along, and it was more about, men are not doing housework, and men are not helpful around the house. And then it became, why do we need a man? This all evolved as women became more engaged in the workplace, more empowered to become more like men, to be independent, to be able to provide all their needs themselves. And sex toys came in and all that stuff. What do we need a man for? And this shift changed the whole dynamic of relationships to where we have twice as many women who are single, men, twice as many single men. And right now, some things I've read are 50% of single men today don't even want to be in a committed relationship. When I was growing up, and the world was very different to a certain extent, you didn't get to have sex unless you got married, or at least you're in a committed relationship. And then gradually it became so casual, which if you have casual sex, it can't last. So many women were always saying, we had sex and then he doesn't call me back. Well, that's because you had no relationship to start with. You have to build a relationship in the heart and in the mind. Then when it goes to the body, it can be sustained and it will last. So these are some of the basic dynamics that have changed. Women are becoming more masculine. Their stress levels are twice as high as men's, and some of the studies show, in the workplace. And when they come home, their stress levels double. Whereas for a man, whether they're single or married, doesn't matter. And when they come home, for men, most men, their stress levels don't double when they come home. They actually go down even more. So we have a crisis of a lack of open-heartedness. That doesn't mean people aren't loving and supportive. It just means that when you're under stress and your blood flow doesn't fully go to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is linked to an open heart. Optimism, openness, appreciation, trust, acceptance, joy, happiness, all those wonderful qualities of who we are as human beings, they become muted. It's like the temperature goes down in those various arena, the ability to love, to be appreciative is diminished when we're under stress. And we do get a breather from that, which is paradoxically makes everything even worse. And that is, it's kind of like if you're flying first class and you have to go economy is a bummer. If you never tasted first class, you can kind of accept economy class. But once you go on the first class and you get kicked out, say your seat's not available, you get thrown back. It's a bit more uncomfortable. Well, this is what happens in relationships today, which is that the ability to feel love has become diminished in our society due to the high stress levels. Then what occurs is you fall in love, you meet somebody. The act of meeting someone new where there's a sexual attraction will give you first class for a little while. But the first class is only dependent upon the newness. And newness will always go away. And so then it's a drop. It's similar to like taking drugs, which move me towards how to find happiness that's sustained from within, finding the inner happiness through forms of meditation. In relationships, you get this drug high. Basically, you're falling in love. Your brain is making huge amounts of dopamine. When dopamine goes up in men, their testosterone goes up. That creates desire for sex. It creates attention. It creates focus. It creates motivation. All of that will go away once familiarity is set in. There's no newness. And for women, when the dopamine levels are up and the romantic feelings are there, it's because the hormones of romance get produced. Primarily, a lot of estrogen gets produced. A lot of progesterone at the right time gets produced. These are hormones of well-being for women that temporarily will lower their stress levels. But when that newness goes away and comfort sets in, suddenly the hormone shifts. She doesn't get to automatically experience these high levels of estrogen, which are necessary to experience romantic feelings. The whole orgasm experience for women is, and for men, but primarily for women, it's high estrogen. Super high levels of estrogen cause a climax to occur, an orgasmic experience. Well, long before the orgasm, there's these wonderful feelings of romance and appreciation, and problems just seem so small at that point. But when those hormones go out of balance, because you don't have the newness, you come back to the stress level balance. Your little things become annoying, become bothersome, become a big problem, and the ease in which you can communicate goes away. It's like we get free communication. And then suddenly now we're annoyed by things, bothered by things, our feelings get hurt by things. So we want to understand, and that became my later work, which is in beyond Mars and Venus, is I needed to take a lot of the ideas of Men Are From Mars and explain them in terms of hormones, then explain how certain behaviors can help women find a balance within themselves to go from their masculine side to their feminine side. Not that you have to give up your empowerment as a man, but actually find the empowerment of your feminine side. The male power inside of every man or woman is, look what I can do. Look at the money I can make. Look at the accomplishment I achieve. Look at the results I can produce. Look at my discipline, my logic, all that good stuff. We all have it. But when women are unhappy, they're too far on that side, and they need to come back to their female hormones and experience their ability to have other people do things for them. I mean, think about power. Two kinds of power: power to produce results, power to have other people do things for you. But that's a great power. That really, when you got both those powers, you can have huge success in your life. But more importantly, we're on this topic, you can have better relationships, lasting love, lasting passion. Learning how to motivate men is a new skill for women. Because in the beginning, men were automatically motivated, but that will go away. And for women, they're automatically much happier and open and accepting, forgiving. But how to open their heart again and again, that's what, once the dopamine goes away, men have to learn the skills to bring a woman back to her femininity, and women can learn the skills of bringing out the masculinity as men. Today, so much is talked about toxic masculinity, which I just go, well, what a horrible word to use. It's toxic people, whether it be men or women. There's toxic people. There's masculinity is this beautiful, beautiful thing. There's toxic people. And femininity, there's no toxic femininity. There's just femininity. And then toxic people. It could be a man or a woman. So we have to sort of clean our windshields on this whole thing and realize that in your experience of toxic relationships, it's not that people are all toxic, but what happens is that if you don't know how to bring out the best in someone, the worst comes out. And if you don't know how to bring out the best in someone, the worst automatically will start to come out of you, and that just makes it worse. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy is when you're not giving the kind of need, the kind of support your partner needs, it will inhibit their ability to love. And so there's some simple skills that can change some relationships, more complicated skills for some people with more challenges in relationships. But if you don't have this perspective of how men and women are different, you're going to be lost in the wilderness. You can't find your way. But once you understand what a woman needs most and what a man needs most, you can bring out the best of that person and bring back those feelings you had in the beginning, which make relationships so much easier. So that's kind of an overview of my message.
That's brilliant, John. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. So John, real quick, if you want to just tell us maybe some of your stories or just some things about your first, let's say 15, 20 years. So you grew up basically, you said in California, right?
No, I grew up in Houston, Texas.
Oh, Houston, Texas.
Lived in Europe for 9 years in my 20s, and then came to California, and I've been in California ever since.
Any experiences growing up in Houston that you want to share? Any entrepreneurial jobs? Were you always entrepreneurial? And
yeah, I was
marketer?
Even when I was, when my mother realized after 4 older brothers having challenges and problems. I think there's one of my brothers who almost ended up in jail. He was like a mad scientist. He was building rockets and blew up a building to get more nitroglycerin to build his rockets. And so they went to a therapist, and the therapist told my mother that he needed more of a father figure. My dad used to travel quite a bit. He was an oil man, would go up to Canada and various places for the oil wells, searching for oil wells. And so she was very wise in that she made sure that she put me in situations where there were role models. And I think around 10 years old, she enrolled me in karate classes so I could be around a manly man who did karate. And as an entrepreneur, I realized people were buying these karate outfits. Well, I learned how to actually cut the material and sew karate outfits and sell them as a 12-year-old or something like that, or 10 years old. And And I've always had this thing for being unique. And then I was very small doing karate. So they actually had me in the karate magazines. This was before the Karate Kid movie. The magazines called me the Karate Kid, which actually became problematic when I went to junior high school because they put the brochure out with my picture on it and everything to join the karate school. And me, I was a brown belt, and everybody wanted to fight me. So I learned negotiation skills so that I never have to fight anybody. Occasionally there were some fights where they said, all right, we're going to fight during the we're all a gym class or whatever. And I said, I'll meet you at the filling station after school. And I would just never go. I'm not really into fighting. But leadership, as to protect myself, I did form a gang. We never hurt anybody or did anything, but we were a group of guys and I was the leader. So evidently I was born with some leadership skills. Then my mother decided that I needed more masculine direction as well. And she brought me to, I think it's 12 years old at that point, she said, oh, I have something wonderful to show you, John, to share with you. I've got something. And I was all excited. My mother brings me to this field with a bunch of men are rolling newspapers for paper routes. So I became a paper boy of the biggest paper route. Somehow I got it and nobody wanted me to have it. It was like this cherished route. And he said, well, he's too young. We're not going to give it to him. Then my mother said, well, give it to me. I'm not too young. So she got it, gave it to me. And she would actually in the beginning years would drive me on my paper route. She's a very wonderful mom, very attentive. And then I took over my own route and built another route and had the biggest paper route there. I had a group of kids. I was only 15 or 16, but younger than me. And I give them Coca-Colas and they'd roll my papers. And so that was all fun. And I had somebody collecting the money for it all. So I was a little entrepreneur at that time. I really liked making money. That was fun, buying my own car. So I had a streak of that independence inside of me. And then as a student, learning transcendental meditation was the highlight for me at 18, because that was, we all have to have a vision, a dream of what I want. And that was my dream, was enlightenment. The whole idea of enlightenment was that you could be free from all emotional problems. You were just free. You could find your full potential and manifest it and make your dreams come true. And that was all true. Okay. That really happened for me. All that stuff happened for me. And the emotional issues went away. I remember as a child, I've always had sort of a philosophical point of view. I was sharing with my mom, probably one of my first philosophical ideas that I still could teach a seminar on it today. And that's, I would experience, I said, Mom, I noticed that I have these things upset me. And then somehow it all just goes away. And then something new upsets me. And then it just kind of goes away. And another drama happens. Then a new thing happens. And it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. And then it's like a circle. And then it comes back again. Another one of the earlier problems comes back, emotional upset, bothered by something. But this time I'm more familiar with it, more capable of dealing with it. And then another one comes up. So each time I seem to get better at having the same problems come back. They always go away, but I become more participating and make them going away. And I feel more confident because of that, because I can continue to make them go away and get better at it. Well, later on, I read a story about Buddha, which perfectly explained that, which is Buddha. He said, a man comes to him and says, I have all these problems. Can you make them go away? And Buddha said, no, everybody is born with 84 problems. There's only one of those 84 problems that you can solve, and then you'll be happy. He said, well, what is that? He said, it's the problem that we want problems to go away before we can be happy. But once you embrace that life will always present you with challenges and problems, and don't resist life because of the problems, but to embrace that problems will always come. And what you can do is learn how to overcome them. And the joy of life is the process of effortlessly overcoming them, trusting that they will come and go. And they all come and go. It's like a wave, goes up and down, up and down. So that's also one of my themes in Mars and Venus, Men Are From Mars, about women. Women, in my opinion, to a great extent. And we can always say when I talk about women, we're talking about the female side, because many men today are way on their female side. So they will have some of the challenges, but in a different way. but they will have these emotional challenges. When you're way on your male side, your challenges have to be with how to solve problems, how to be motivated, how to overcome, how to be truthful, how to have integrity, how to be logical, how to achieve your goals, get it done, and overcoming those challenges with confidence in yourself. Whereas for women, the female side of us is the more emotional side of us, the emotional side of us that has fears and concerns and disappointments and hurts and anger and frustration and all that. And why I can divide it that way is that it's kind of logical. Historically, that's always been the case. But people want to say that men and women are the same, which is nonsense. On a biological level, and that's why I wrote this book, Beyond Mars and Venus, because as women are becoming more like men, their happiness comes when they can balance both sides of them. And for same thing for men, when men are too far on their female side, and that was what was happening to me back in the 60s. See, this is where men, at least in my experience of life, men started becoming more feminized. Women were becoming more masculine. Women were all like empowerment, feminism, women's group. We're going to break through the glass ceiling and all of that. So that's their male side. We're going to be independent and confident and capable, do what we like. Well, men were shifting. I became a hippie. I had long hair, had outfit, beads and boots, and look how good I look, how cool I am. But the main theme there as men back in the 60s was do what you like, free sex. So you have to realize the world is very different. You couldn't just go out and have sex. You had to have a job. You had to convince a woman. You had to propose marriage or be engaged or at least make a commitment. Then you can have sex. That was sort of the general idea, that sex was sinful unless it was in the context of marriage. That's sort of the extreme version of it. So what that did for men was made them masculine. It said, you can't just do what you like. You've got to do what you have to do to achieve your goal. And if you're good at that, then you get picked by a woman and you can have sex. Sex drive is very strong in teenage males, okay? It's 10 times higher than in a woman. She can say, oh, yes, I want sex. But we're talking, yeah, compared to your girlfriends. But men, it's 10 times higher because their testosterone goes 10 times higher, okay? 10 times higher than a woman's. That's where the sex center is for a man. So women can't even imagine what it is for a guy. And we'll do anything to get sex, basically. That's why men work hard. These guys are out there and they're working dangerous, difficult construction jobs and all that dirty, dangerous stuff for thousands of years. We don't complain about it because we get a big reward. We get the sex, because what men don't realize, men don't have so much subjective awareness as women tend to have. And why we want to have sex, certainly it feels really good. But when you have sex, it's because you had to earn it. And what you earned is a woman's love. So, men don't walk around saying, I need love, I need love. Women do, why am I not feeling loved? I need love, 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 love. Whereas men don't walk around saying that. They're like looking to score and to hit and have sex and whatever. But why are they doing it? You see, that's part of what meditation gave me. It goes back to the why. It goes back to the source. What is giving rise to my thinking, my behaviors, my motivations? And ultimately for a man, what he's looking for is love. Okay, we all need love. I comb my hair so that you'll like me more. You'll trust me more. Liking me, trusting me, accepting me, appreciating me. These are all forms of love. Whereas women will be more in touch with the caring and empathy and understanding and so forth. That's what they're wanting. They want to be seen and heard and touched and felt and cared for and protected and so forth. All of the things I just said are behaviors a man can provide, which produce estrogen. See, it's all biological. See, for women to make a baby, everything in evolution-wise, we are animals, we're mammals with a higher consciousness glued on top. The whole limbic system is an animal, and behind that is a snake. Okay, the unconscious. This is who we are as beings, and the mammal brain is controlling 99% or 90% of what's going on inside of us, the motivations. Why is it I want to do this? Why do I like this? Why do I react this way? Why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling good today? All of this is based upon programming of millions of years, and all that programming is designed for evolution so that babies get created, that we eat food and we make babies. It's just coming back from Africa. You see, all they're doing is they're mating and they're eating and they're protecting. This is mating, eating, and protecting all the animals, and it's fun to to see all the things they did. I think one of the highlights for me when we saw the gorillas, we climbed a mountain, a group of us, and with guides and everything, to see these real giant gorillas. I mean, huge, bigger than anything you ever see at a zoo. And the big guy comes around and he's sitting there looking at us, and we're looking at him. We're like 5 feet away. And they're used to tourists coming up there. It's a whole industry there. People come to see the gorillas, silverback gorillas. And what was not usual, is doesn't happen that often with the gorillas, is a female came and presented herself to the gorilla. And again, she picked her man. Okay, she picked the top guy. And of course, well, there's more to the story, but the female comes and now they're doing it. But first, it's about 10 minutes of foreplay where they're just connecting and connecting and connect. Even gorillas take 10 minutes of foreplay. And then the act happens, and he does his thing that she's making her cuckoo, these noises of her orgasm that go on for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And then he just lays down and she wanders off. Okay. It's like, he falls asleep right afterwards. He's lying down a good 5 minutes. And if you look at we didn't get to see the rhinoceros have sex, but when a rhinoceros has sex, they literally fall over and are unconscious for 5 minutes. Okay. Because when you ejaculate, your life force goes out of you, even with a silver force gorilla. Today, when guys are doing porn and they ejaculate, they feel awful. They just feel awful. Masturbation makes you feel awful because you just lost some of your life force energy. And then there's this whole meme that goes around where you only feel bad after ejaculating with yourself because society says it's bad. So if everybody said it was good, somehow you're going to feel good. No, it doesn't work that way. Is it your soul tells you when things you do or say don't resonate with being your true self, you feel bad, you feel awful. If you lose a lot of money, you feel awful, not because society says you lose money, you feel awful. You just did something that wasn't life supporting to yourself. If we could just understand that today, we're just going in the wrong direction. And so I'm not a moralist, do as you like. I've done what I liked in my life, but that was what the 60s were about, is a man going to his female side, which brings more joy and happiness into your life for a while, without a doubt. You've been over here on this male side. This was Vietnam, and I was demonstrating against Vietnam, and I wasn't going to go. Unfortunately, my number didn't come up, but I'm over on my male side, which would be, I'm ready to go to war, ready to go to battle, ready to work hard, ready to have a job. I'm going to wait to have sex till I'm married. That's very masculine energy, disciplined energy. Suddenly, we could do what we like. The women were all available to have sex. They wanted to be like men, free to have sex. So now men are like, do what you like. Just have sex, go rock and roll, do drugs, all that. It feels really good in the beginning, but you feel really bad afterwards. What happens is you do what you like, you go to your female side too far, and you lose your masculine side. And that's what today is a big example of that. So many of our younger people don't have the motivation to work, to accomplish, to achieve. They get too dependent on easy life, on food, drugs, sex, entertainment, games, playing. And there's nothing wrong with playing and entertainment. It's just when you're too dependent on it. That's the whole thing. Too dependent on sugar. Do what you like. And that permissive attitude of doing what you're like is what happens. What happens for men is they go over there and they get stuck there, and they lose their power to not get upset about stuff. What's happening as a marriage counselor, I see it. Their wife will start complaining about something, and a man will start complaining back. It's like we're going to have a battle here. This is stupid. Men need a teacher, guide, and to explain to him if she complains about things, he thinks, and it's a logical thought, just it's a logic based on a faulty premise that it's going to work. If somebody complains, let's say it's two men, and you complain to me about something, I can complain back and say, yeah, but you did this and this and this. And you go, oh, I realize that. And you're done. It's a simple thing. But when a woman complains, what she's really looking for is not a solution or whatever. She's wanting you to hear her first. That's her priorities. Hear me, hear that I'm unhappy, understand why I'm unhappy, understand why I'm frustrated, understand why I'm concerned, understand what I'm feeling is more important in many cases for a woman's well-being than basically saying, oh, okay, I did that. I'm sorry, I'll do it again. I won't do it again. Or explaining to her, which men will do, why she's getting upset over nothing. See, this is in a man's mind. It's like what she's complaining about is not a big deal. And that's why she's complaining, is because you think it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. You know, there's so much of what women complain about. It's not a big deal that they wouldn't complain about if they were happy. But you see, when you know, one of my phrases is, one of my daughters was not that nice to me the other day, but she had a toothache. Okay. And so I immediately could go, well, nobody can be nice when they're having a toothache. Just like you're so irritated by everything because there's pain inside. So you have to understand that women today they have a toothache. They can't be happy, but what you can do is help them find their happiness, because with women, if they can talk about what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what's going on inside, and you don't argue back, just let her talk for a while, her attitude will change. Her thoughts will change. Everything will be fine again to a great extent. And she'll realize it's not that big of a deal. See, women need to talk many times about something and have somebody empathize with them, for them to raise their estrogen levels, which will lower their stress levels. It's all biological. And then she kind of calms down and she stops making adrenaline in her brain, cortisol in her brain, and she starts making estrogen in her brain. And from estrogen, she comes back to trusting that everything's okay. It's not such a big deal. And if you can make an adjustment, that would be nice. See, life goes back to what it was in the beginning of the relationship, because you're producing the hormones you were making at the beginning of the relationship. But that takes work. That takes understanding men and understanding women. If my wife is upset about something, I already know that she's making a big deal out of something. It's not such a big deal. And if I let her talk about it, she'll start sounding like it's not a big deal. But men, when explained to her it's not a big deal, and push her emotions down with logic, and that often is the worst thing you can do. So men thinking it's the best thing you can do. Let's say you're bothered by me and I explain to you, no, that wasn't me that did that. It was so-and-so, and they did it for this reason. Let's say I give you a logical excuse for something. You'll go, oh, okay. Well, you give a woman a logical excuse for something in the middle of her complaining, and she'll just get more upset. She'll go, you don't understand. You don't know. And it's hard for her to find love. See, it was so sweet with my married partner now. We're on a vacation with a bunch of people, and all people said it was just so wonderful to see an example of a couple who's expressing unconditional love. Unconditional love. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing where you're not always having to argue about stuff, but you can actually relax and hear each other and ponder it and think about it and make small adjustments. It's a big challenge that we try to change our partners. It's one of the biggest problems in relationships, is that men, when women are upset, we want to change their upset into feeling good again. We're not trusting, and we don't have the skills to support her and finding the good inside of her again. We don't know how to do it. We do the worst. It's like there's a fire, we throw gasoline on it rather than just letting it burn out and bring back the love that's inside of her. The same thing what women do while men are trying to change how women feel. There's a tendency in that direction. For women, the tendency is to change men's behavior. And women will think, well, I can't change how I feel until you change your behavior. And that's a limited thought. That's a state of lower consciousness, a lack of explanation. You can always change how you feel without the outer world changing. That's enlightenment. That's something you can learn to do. And it doesn't take a lifetime for that kind of enlightenment. It takes good explanation, good understanding of processes. So when you're upset, how you can explore your feelings and come back to feeling good, feeling loving, feeling forgiveness. Overall, everybody every day should be saying, I forgive my partner for the ways they knowingly and unknowingly hurt me. And I hope, and I ask their higher self to forgive me for the ways I knowingly and unknowingly hurt them. Forgiveness needs to be our goal. Gratitude needs to be our goal. Compassion needs to be our goal. These are called values. These are the values of a relationship, as opposed to the value of I have to express how my negative feelings, or I have to be rewarded for everything I do, if a man thinks that way. We have to get beyond the limitations of this monkey brain, this limited limbic system, and come to the prefrontal cortex, which is capable of applying these ideas that we all, we read books on it and everything, but then it's kind of like people go to church on Sunday and on Monday they're arguing, right? They read these books on self-improvement and they just go right back into I'm upset because of this, and why should I bother with her if she's going to treat me this way? And well, I've done this for him and he doesn't do for me. Of course I'm upset. I say, yeah, of course you're upset. Now it's time for you to find your love again. Don't demand your partner to change before you can be happy or loving. This is a skill, and very few people have that skill, and it's easy to learn. This is the whole key, is learning how to be a loving person. And this should be our value in relationships. But it's hard when nobody's taught you how to do this. And it's even doubly hard when you have this amazing experience in the beginning of newness that stimulates these romantic hormones, which are inevitably will always go away. And once they go away, they become less than, you feel more and more flat in a relationship. Then you more resent your partner, resent the relationship because it's not making you feel that way, because you don't know that you can bring up those feelings. How can I bring out the best in my partner? And it's, it's, even as I describe this, I know people listening, they go, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, because you don't have the answers of how to do it. This is a big, big subject. And you kind of go, why do I have to learn all this? And then some people, when I start to, in the beginning of teaching and think, oh, this is so complicated, why should I even bother with the relationships? Well, that's because you can't learn it in a day. It takes time to learn it. It's like a computer, a software. You have to learn the software. And once you learn the software, it's so easy once you learn the software. However, until you learn the software, it's really, really hard. And that's what we are, is in a generation of people where the software has completely changed for living our lives. The old software taught women how to be women and men how to be men. And now it was time for a new software. It's how men can be both masculine and feminine, which means be loving and kind and generous and caring about others, at the same time being independent, successful, caring about yourself, achieving your goals, competing with others, but do it in a new way. Balance from your male side to your female side. How women can, if they wish to have children, have a family, but also be empowered and independent, not overly dependent on their partner. How they can ask for their partner to get what they want. Society used to train men to be men, women to be women. And now the society teach women how to be masculine and feminine at the same time. There's no book on this. Well, there is now. It's called right over here, right there, called Beyond Mars and Venus. How to be on your male side and female side at the same time. And it only can happen through relationships. Okay, this is never can say only, but the most powerful way I've seen to do this is in partnership. And if you think about it, life always is dependent upon partnership of man and woman. That's what gives birth to babies. It's the creative power of the universe. Not that everybody has to have that. Not everybody's going to be happy in their life and fulfilled in their life and healthy in their life. It's from one perspective, life is unfair from another point of view. But when you consciously connect with your soul, which is both masculine and feminine, and you can have both those qualities together, man, life can get so much better. You connect with the source of creativity, which is a source of love, which is a source of kindness and wisdom and empathy. And all these wonderful qualities are within every single person. And what I've seen is that through relating with men respecting women and women appreciating men, those are the key factors. Men respecting femininity and femininity appreciating masculinity. And you don't see it today. You don't see women appreciating men today in their whole. They make jokes about men and put down men. And it's just horrible when you look at it from my perspective of how men are being pushed down and how women are pushing men down and trying to become like men, becoming masculine. It's like, how can I get respect if I'm a woman? See, men do not respect women, learning how to respect femininity. They used to, but to a greater extent than today. But when women don't feel respected, they say, I deserve to be respected. And they do. When femininity is not respected, then women become like men, because in this backward world, men get the respect. And so if I want respect as a woman, I have to become like a man rather than learning how to get respect as a woman. Think about romance. A man kneels before a woman to propose for marriage. It's not the woman who pursues the man. It's not the woman who kneels before the man to say, will you marry me? It's the man that does that. This is where you still have a little bit of common sense on masculine and feminine. This is the relationship of male to female This is the foundation of life. This is the big lie today. The big lie today is that men and women are pretty much the same. No, we're not. We're extremely different. We have different primary needs. We have the medical system has no problem with this. A woman's heart attack's different from a man's. Women's bones degenerate not like a man's. All these sicknesses that women have that men don't have, sicknesses that men have that women don't have. In the medical system, you have to know men and women are different. But when somehow you step outside of the lab and now we're all the same, nonsense. It's only creating problems. And this has started 30 years ago, 40 years ago in the universities, preaching this idea that gender difference was a social construct. And that, big battle between, are we naturally different or has society made us different? As if that was, as a child, I was able to see through that one. Well, of course, we're naturally different, and society, culture either brings out the masculine side of me or it brings out the feminine side of me, because we all have a bit of both, masculine and feminine. But whenever we're stressed, whenever we're drug addicts, you see all these rock and roll drug addict guys are acting like females, they're all druggies. They're unhappy. They're stressed out. You see the children today that think they're not male or not female. They're suicidal. The problem is they're not connected to who they really are. When you're connected to who you really are, you're happy and fulfilled. We have to look at disease and sickness, and then we have to realize what is our true self. When you find your true self, and how can you know it? If you're happy and you know it, you find your true self. If you're anxious, if you're not sleeping well, if you hate yourself, then you don't know yourself. These are people that need love and support. Why are we having so many problems? People are confused about their gender today because we have 70% of the Black population, over and over I hear these statistics, 70% of the Black population do not know their fathers. They're not living in the home. 40% of the white population does not know their fathers that are not living in the home. How can I, as a male, feel confident that I can make a woman, if I don't make a woman happy, be in a relationship, if I don't see my father making a woman happy? I'm confused. I don't know what masculinity is. I remember as a little boy watching my dad shave. I felt anxious. How will I ever learn to do that? Well, my dad taught me. You see, by being in the presence of a father, and that's your father, you naturally wake up to your masculinity. Even little children, they find, if you hang out with your dad, then masculine qualities will emerge. If you hang out with your sisters and your mother is protecting you all the time, you'll become overly feminine. And it's like parenting skills. Today, parenting skills are totally off. What we teach is mother knows best. It used to be father knows best, and that would be father knows best for boys, and it would be mother knows best for women, girls, because intuitively they know what they need. Today, intuition is off. You can't be accurately intuitive if you're in a stress state. And what you can see biologically, the stress state in a woman is when she's making more male hormones in relationship to how many female hormones she needs to make. And the thing for a man is whenever a man is angry, for example, a very dysfunctional aspect of masculinity would be when a man has too many female hormones, he's angry, or he's afraid and scared and doesn't take anger. See, this is simple. Think of it. Everybody hears these words, fight or flight. Whenever a man is in fight or flight, anxiety, fear, not sleeping, angry, irritable, resentful, mean, cruel, and this is what happens to men when their hormones are too feminine. When you see these guys fighting, what they're doing at that time, unless they're like samurais and they're cool, calm, and collected, and they're defending their families, from danger. That's one thing. That's a very masculine, cool, calm, and collected, detached, but not indifferent. Detachment. Nothing bothers me. It doesn't upset me, but can make me happy. If it makes me sad, then I'm too far on my female side. And that's not a bad thing. I just know how to manage it. So I come back to my masculinity. It's like balancing your masculine and feminine side is like walking on a tightrope. You go too far to your female side, then you need to come back to your male side. So something might upset me a bit. That's my female side. Now let me analyze it, let it go, solve the problem, come back into balance. Everything is cool, calm, and collected. And if you're in balance, cool, calm, and collected, then you also feel love and appreciation, trust and caring and understanding and empathy. All the good qualities come to a man whenever his balance of masculine and feminine is in balance. All the negative qualities in men come out when their masculinity is going down and their femininity is going up. He becomes emotional, he becomes irritated, he becomes annoyed, he becomes mad. And there is a negative, if we go further in a state of negativity, a man can have no estrogen and have only testosterone, then he can become detached, indifferent, and cruel. That's when he has no femininity at all. That would be a psychopath. A psychopath basically is no connection to his female side. But we're talking about the very small percent of the population are that. More sociopaths, that's when a man's hormones are too feminine and not enough masculinity. So think of, if you don't want to look at the hormones, although I like looking at that because it's biology, it's science, and nobody disagrees with it in science. So if they understand and they studied hormones, a lot of people go, oh, where's your research? Well, there's tons of research out there. Go online, find it yourself, look it up. I'll give you a few examples of it.
John, sorry to interrupt you, John. I just want to go back to your story though, because you're doing some excellent stuff here, and this is really incredible points. But I want to just to understand your story a little bit better, and then we got a lot more questions, which could basically tie a lot of this stuff back together. Right. So if you're cool with that, all right, thank you, John. Appreciate you. So John, just to wrap up your story, you were in your 20s, and at what point did you start to really know that you were going to be a writer, and that this book that you're famous for, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? At what point did you know that that was going to be a part of you, and know that you wanted to go that direction and find your purpose?
Well, I found my purpose at 18. Okay, my purpose was to become enlightened, the best person I could be. And that happened in my 20s. That would be a stage of enlightenment. That's self-realization. And literally around 28 years old is the time where your prefrontal cortex can potentially develop fully. That doesn't in everybody. It's literally, they get stunted growth, but you can learn processes to help find your self-realization. But self-realization is that finding who you are as a good, capable, confident, loving person. Okay, that's who I am. And in terms of oneness with the universe is the spiritual context of self-realization. So that was my 20s. Now, then it came time to come out into the world because I found it. Okay, it was like, my teacher, Mari, she was like a father to me. And I wanted what he had. I wanted what he had. And by the time I was 28, I had what he had. And as soon as I had what he had, the need to be involved with that organization and that group and be with him, it just went away. It was gone. And I had no idea what I was to do. So then I went having no job outside the TM movement. I flew out to California broke, basically, and was homeless.
Wow. I
was homeless. It was a horrible time. I was living on the beaches in California because, you see, when you're in a state of enlightenment, you feel like everything is grace, right? Everything comes to you because, see, the truth of life is everything you need is always in front of you. This was actually a message my mother had given me through as an example, but also sometimes she would even say it when I'd be upset and crying or bothered. And she would say, John, everything is available to you. And when you're upset, you're looking in the wrong direction for what you need. You see, it's like a woman saying to me when I explain men go to their caves. Sometimes men just need to pull away. Has nothing about her. You need to pull away because pulling away, feeling alone, feeling independent on your own rebuilds your testosterone. And that's for well-being for men. We need to pull away. And then women will often say to me, well, when he pulls away, what am I supposed to do? I said, you have a life. You're not be overly dependent on him for your happiness. You have to have other things. So when you're unhappy, you're looking in the wrong direction for what you need. Because if life is grace, we're given everything. It's there. Everything is there, but people refuse to see it. They say, no, I don't want that. I want this. If this is not available to you, something else is. And that's where you have to go. But people know, no, my partner has to change, or I have to have more money before I can be happy. No, you don't. You can do a lot of things to be happy and then come back and make more money. Okay, you get stuck on one thing. You got to diversify. Like as an investment person, just everything in one thing. You diversify, and that's common sense. But emotionally, we get stuck on one thing. So anyway, I was feeling like life is grace, everything is good. And so I fly out to California. I'm expecting someone to meet me. No one met me. Then I'm expecting something to unfold. And all take it as it comes was a phrase that the Maharishi used to say. Just so I'm ready to take it as it comes, and everything comes to me. And it didn't. So what came to me was the beach. But I made the best of it. And there I was sitting on the beach. And this was a formative experience for me. It was scary. It was cold. It was uncomfortable. And people there were dangerous. Okay. They were dangerous, but one night we're sitting around the campfire, sleeping on the beach, and they're passing beer around. They're all on welfare. I had no welfare, I had nothing, but I was good at fasting for a while, so I could go without food. And he's handing me the beer, and he said to me, John, have a beer. And I said, no, I don't drink. And at that time, that was the case. I don't drink. And he says, you should have a good time. We're all having, we're having a good time. We love hearing you talk. We have no idea what you're talking about. And it was right at that moment where there was no sort of purpose to this. The teaching that I had was not relevant to them. They couldn't understand it. It wasn't their message. And suddenly the weight of the uncomfortableness felt really hugely painful. I felt like when I was on the beach, I was helping people. As long as you're helping people, you're a spiritual person, it feels good. And even though I was impoverished, had nothing. But now suddenly it was like being broke and not helping anybody was a huge, painful thing. So for me, unlike others, I then called my mother and asked for help. And my mother gave me help. So she said, all right, well, I'll send you some money for an apartment, but you have to have a job. So then I got a job, and I got some money for an apartment, and I worked at Stanford Research Institute and learned to become, first I went 6 months to computer programming school, learned COBOL, that was a language then for computers, and then got a job at Stanford Research Institute because my brother worked there, and he got me the job. So this is the blessing in my life. And I realized this is privilege. I had a mother who could help me if I was on the beach, but I had to call and ask for it. And then I had a brother who could help me, but I had to ask for that, and I had to train for it, had to work for it, got my job, saved up my money. And I really liked making money and programming at that point, some big programming jobs they had there. But it was through the telephone that we would do our programming. And while I would program, while I was good at it, I learned how to do it. I'm very logical. I like that a lot. But my neck had so much pain. My body was in so much pain, I had to stop. And that's because I was doing the wrong thing. If you're doing the wrong thing in life, you're going to feel a lot of pain. The pain wakes us up to say, hey, this is not the right direction. You've got to go in another direction. So then I was able to save up my money and start being an entrepreneur and teach my own classes on what I wanted to teach. And what I wanted to teach, as I mentioned before, was I've been learning so much about sex. Having been a celibate for 9 years, it was quite an exciting topic for me, and learning about and things I didn't know. So I assumed other people didn't know. And so now that I had enough money, I started on my own to start developing workshops and teaching about sex. So that was the beginning of my later entrepreneurial life, which is teaching classes. Then I had counseling. The people who take my class would want to counsel with me. And during that time, I developed a PhD thesis with a distance school based upon my education in Switzerland. Then I got a PhD on developing novel ideas in sexuality, which I did. I have all these great novel ideas for sexuality, which for me kept sex great for 34 years. And now it's, continues to grow.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Where did you get your PhD from? That's a very interesting.
Columbia Pacific was a distance, the beginning of distance learning, where you can look at what you create your thesis on what you've done, and then correspondence with a professor, and you get a degree from that.
Wow, because that's an interesting topic that I didn't even know they had that.
But you create your own topic. That's what PhD thesis is, your own work. I did my own work. My master's and bachelor's came from European Research University on the science of creative intelligence, which, by the way, the subject Maharishi invented. It later in America became an accredited school called Maharishi International University. But I was only in the beginning of it in Europe. So that was my journey. And so now I had these workshops. People would come to my workshops, and then they would want counseling with me later, some of them. And then, so for 9 years, I was a marriage counselor. And learned. That's when I learned how men and women are different. And at the same time, for much of that time, I was married to Bonnie, my wife, my soulmate. And the same complaints women had in counseling were the same complaints Bonnie had about me. It was literally like every woman that came to me for counseling was married to me. And so it's much easier to hear women talking about somebody else's problem than having them directed at me. So I was able to see the mistakes I was making through hearing what women were saying about their husbands. But more importantly, I was able to see how women did not understand men. They clearly don't understand men. They don't get it. How do you get more from a man? Typically, you could summarize it. When a woman wants more from a man that she's not getting, she'll complain. That's the number one way to not get more. It's the number one way to not get more. If you complain to somebody, they will give you less. It's not like you're a boss in a business and you can complain to your employees and they have to change in order to get paid. It's not that way. This is a loving relationship. This person loves you. How do you get more? It's called ask for more in a nice way, in a way that understands the way men think. And women don't know how to do that because they don't understand the way men think. They don't understand what motivates men. What motivates men is appreciate what he's doing, forgive his mistakes, and ask for more in small increments. And that's a summary of a more complicated story, but it's simple once you understand the dynamic. My wife figured it out. Here's, for example, a pet peeve she had about me as I would leave the lights on in the living room when I walked through the house. She'd say, you forgot again. You forgot again. Why don't you, or with a tone of voice of, why don't you turn out the light? It's wasting money. It's not good for the environment. She had every example to justify her request. Finally, she gave up. And one day she poked her head in the kitchen and she said, oh, John, with a big smile on her face. Anytime you smile at a man, his testosterone goes up, which means his willingness to listen and hear you and serve you and be happy to give to you. That's what testosterone does for men. And so she, big smile on her face, she said, oh, John, and I got my attention, a positive tone of voice. She says, I've noticed you've been turning out the light lately. And positive acknowledgement of what I have done. Then she says, I've noticed that you've been turning out the light lately. And I wanted to remind you how good it makes me feel. See, most women would say, I want to remind you that you still leave it off. But she didn't say that. I noticed you've been turning it off lately. And I just wanted to remind you how good it makes me feel. It's not a big deal. Another powerful phrase. If women could learn this phrase, there'd be so much more love on the planet. She said, it's not a big deal, but sometimes you still forget. And she immediately walked out of the room. Now, what man can't hear that and have it stick? You see, you have to have it stick. Men forget complaints. Do I want to carry complaints around that I'm not good enough and I'm a loser guy? No, we have to defend ourselves. We have to explain, for me, before it would be, what, no big deal. So what if I leave the light on? We're using green energy. It's not a big deal. When I finally told her that, she said, well, we want to be an example for others. For me, it's all silly. So how can I make a change over something little? But when it's a big thing, of course I'll make an adjustment. If there's a fire, I'm going to run in and save something. I'm going to do whatever she needs at that time when it's a big problem. See, men, when the problems are big, men's testosterone goes big. And then there's more motivation. When the problems are little, there's not much testosterone involved in the whole thing. So he easily forgets. But what's bigger than danger is a woman's appreciation and love and trust. And that message where she said, it's not a big deal. Well, she's basically accepting me just who I am. She's already acknowledged that she appreciates me. And she's trusting me by not trying to say, so are you going to change? And will you do it? When are you going to do it? These are like cutting messages. Women don't think like men. And so they don't understand how they're unknowingly turning men off. When I was coming back on the plane, there's a movie Out of Africa with Robert Redford and that other Academy Award winning woman. And their relationship broke up and she was demanding that he not drive another woman in his airplane. This is a great example. So he has this 2-seater airplane and there's a woman, cute young woman, and she says, I forbid you from letting her go on the airplane with you. And he says, you're just being a illogical woman. Now, I would never use those phrases, but let's just see what happened in the movie. You're just being illogical. Do you think I have any interest in that woman? She said, no, I know you don't. Do you think I'm going to leave you and go with that woman? She says, I know not. So why is it a big deal if I bring her in the airplane? Pure logic. And she goes, I forbid it. I forbid it. You cannot take that woman in the airplane. And then Robert Redford's sitting there listening to her. He says, you have no idea what those words are doing inside my head. You have no idea what those words are doing to me. Because she had no idea. You can't just make an illogical, irrational demand on a man. Now, what she could have done, again, they don't have any relationship skills. They just showed the problem and then they divorced and everything ended over stupid thing like that, where a woman was controlling a man and he was like, his whole attraction to her and who he was, independent man, I'm a free man. All she had to do is say, you're absolutely right. There's no logical reason why you shouldn't bring her into that. And I completely trust. And I'm so insecure sometimes because you leave me all the time. And I accept that our relationship is, we're not married and I have no control over you. And I just feel insecure sometimes that I'm going to lose you. And so in this situation, as a gift to me, would you not take her? Because it's embarrassing to me. And that's it. It's my stuff. It would be a gift. He said, okay, you're not controlling me. You presented a problem for me to solve. I will solve that problem. I don't have to bring her in my airplane. It's about logically understanding the way men operate inside. We do not want to be controlled, but we're happy to be of service to you if it's our gift. We want to be appreciated for it, be acknowledged for it, and so forth. But no, it was a demand. Anytime you make demands like this, it takes away all the romantic feelings we have. Romantic men, we all have it in us somewhere. It's so generous, it's so flexible, it's so giving. But if it's not recognized and appreciated and in the way I was just mentioning, we'll become just like that, just like she was that way, he was that way, and the whole beautiful relationship was over. He flew off and then he died. It was just so sad. And this is what happens in relationships. Couples get caught in these power struggles, and it's just unnecessary if we have better communication skills.
So John, I definitely want to get back to your story. Just if we can pause real quick because you made a great point.
I have to say to you, I know you like to do the story. I have no interest in telling my story. So it seems to be coming. All my interest is just using parts of my story to make a point. I will do that. So the point I make with my story is 9 years of listening to women, not understanding men at all, and explaining men to women and having their relationships change overnight without the man being there. So many women say, well, how can my relationship get better if he doesn't come? I say, I don't want him to come. I want you to be here. Empowerment of women is how you can get what you want without having to change men. They want to change for you if you approach them in the right way. Now, having said that, ironically, more men buy my books than women. It used to be more women bought it than men. But the whole idea is that men love this information. Why? Because it's logical. It makes sense to men. Men start to understand it. Men want to figure out women. We just can't figure them out because we don't.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, John. That's what I was going to ask you. I just wanted to pause because you made up a great point, and I just wanted to expand on that real quick before we get back to your story. And that was that maybe the simple answer to sum up what you're saying is for men, if they want to get to woman, you appeal to their emotions. And if woman wants to get to men, you appeal to their logic. Would that be a good way to summarize a lot of your conclusions?
Well, that's one way to do it. It would be a little oversimplification, but definitely I could add to that, which is if you want to bring out a man, be feminine. And men, if you want to bring out the best in a woman, be masculine. And what is masculinity? When you're masculine, you prioritize the woman over anything else. See, we prioritize as men what's most important. We forget everything else. It's just like we have a list. What's most important, then what will become next important, and everything else, we don't think about it. See, this is a design inside of men that's not designed in women's genome. Our genome is different. We have these chromosomes that are the Y chromosome. It's only 23 genes, I think, that are different from a woman. We have everything a woman has, and then we have these 23 genes that negate many of the female genes inside of us, allow us to have different abilities. One of those abilities, for example, is when we're upset, we have the ability to disconnect from emotions. Now, many men today haven't developed that. Part of being a man is learning how to disconnect from emotions, to come back to a sense of detachment. And when women go into detachment, they're going into indifference. They say, I don't care. But a man has the ability to detach from his emotions and still care. I can still be empathetic. And that's what women are really needing from men, is if she's upset at me, I shouldn't get upset with her. Okay. Create time for one person to be upset. And it's the woman that has the right to do it. And men go, well, what about me? She says, you don't understand me. And man will say, well, you don't understand me. And I go, well, that's a stupid thing to say. If she says you don't understand her, take time to understand her in a non-judgmental way. And then you don't need to be understood. Most men, when they say, I want to be understood too, it's because they're just arguing. They're wanting to, I want you to understand why I'm right and you're wrong, as opposed to validate her. But again, it's the nonsense of psychology today, which is feeding women with the idea that men are supposed to validate whatever you feel. Women need to be validated, but to validate her feeling beliefs. See, there's a distinction between a feeling belief and a feeling emotion. What women need, and they don't know how to communicate this, psychology doesn't tell them. All it says is you need to be validated. Okay, how to be validated? You validate not the feeling belief. Let's say the feeling belief is, I feel you don't love me. I feel you don't care about me. Now, I'm a man over here and I love her and I care about her. How can I validate that? How can I validate? I can't, because it's not true. You feel, so what I can do is I can validate when you feel I don't love you, I can validate that must make you sad, or that must make you feel insecure, or that must make you feel afraid. Tell me about your fears. I can validate the emotion, which is your reaction to your faulty belief. I can validate the emotion as no content. It's how I can validate how you react. But women's reactions, they think feelings are thoughts. No, feeling is how you know your thoughts or how you know your emotions. So this is not taught in psychology. It's not taught anywhere. It's basically, I feel, women will say, I feel hurt. That's about the only emotion they'll share, actually straight out share, which is the hardest emotion for a man to ever hear. I feel hurt. You're basically blaming the guy who never wants to hurt you. You've just knocked his testosterone down completely. And it's the worst thing you can say to a man. And yet it's like psychology 101 for beginners and all women. It's anything happens, I feel hurt. I feel hurt. And just kind of like, my God, I'm not trying to hurt you. So there's other emotions you can share that are much easier for a man to feel empathy for. Hurt is an emotion. I feel hurt. I can feel empathy for that. But if that's the only one, it's very hard for a man to always go to, I'm a bad guy. I'm a bad guy. There's a lot of other emotions. Like, I feel frustrated when you do this. I feel sad when you do this. I feel afraid that you're not going to do this. I feel afraid that you think this. I feel afraid you care about this. I feel embarrassed when you say this or you do that. It's like the example I gave in that movie. She could have just said to her husband, honey, that girl's so pretty and she's so cute and she'll be in the plane with you and everybody knows you're my partner. I just feel embarrassed. I know, you don't care about her or whatever. I'm not threatened by that, but it's just so embarrassing me for her. I'm insecure. Would you help me? Then now you give him a problem to solve, but it takes being feminine to do that, not controlling, not dominating him, telling him you have to do what I say or I can't be happy and you're going to have to move out. This is like, we get so extreme with these whole things. And I don't want to put it just on the woman because that was happened in the woman. What we men do is when our wives are unhappy, when they're making a big deal out of nothing, which is overreaction, irrational, whatever, which women do all the time, as much as it's politically incorrect to say it. Come on, have a little self-reflection. The word, I would never say to my wife, you're overreacting. I would never say to her, you're being irrational. I don't say that because that would be cutting to her. But Freud figured this out a long time ago, which is whenever anybody's upset, whether you're a man or you're a woman and you're upset, you're raising your voice, you're overreacting. Okay, that's what an overreaction is. It means that you're reacting to a situation and tomorrow you won't react that way. And 6 months from now, you're not going to react that way. There's no intrinsic reason to be so upset other than you're tipped out of balance, other than your hormones are out of balance, other than you're displacing a lot of other things that are upsetting you onto one thing. It's irrational, and it will come across as non-logical. So it's not that women can't be logical. It's just that women need to be emotional first and be heard. That settles out their hormones. Then they can be very logical, and they can be very forgiving. They can be accepting. They can be understanding. They can see their side of it. But that's another problem in psychology. So many therapists will sit, listen, and validate a woman's complaints. Yeah, I can validate his complaints. Yeah, you have this complaint. But what are you doing in the relationship? They don't know how they contribute to the problems in the relationship. Let's say your husband doesn't come home at night. He wants to go out and spend time with his guys. And so, yeah, I can understand. You feel abandoned. You feel sad. You feel afraid. He doesn't love you enough. Okay, I can validate all that. And I can agree with you that, yes, I'm sure you want more in a relationship. That would be great. What do you think you're doing to contribute to him not wanting to come home? Because what do you do every time when he comes home? You complain to him, you're out too late. Anytime you complain to a man, he's going to resist. This is, for a man or for a woman, the universal principle in the universe is that when you push back, the universe pushes at you. Okay, if I say you do this, I'm not going to do that. It's just, you push, he pushes back. He will defend, and men are great defenders, and you want them to be defenders. They will protect you. They will die for you because they are defenders. So if you attack a man, he will defend. And men, if you attack a woman, she will close down to you. She'll just push away from you. Her legs are not going to open for you because you yelled at her. This is just the reality of life. You have to understand how we are created as human beings, and we have this gift. We're no longer just mammals. We have this connection to the divine, which is wisdom and compassion. But how to apply that? It's so many of the ideas that people have in relationships don't work. We're living at this low level of trying to negotiate relationships that would have worked 50 years ago or 100 years ago. It doesn't work today. We are different beings. Women have more access to their masculine side. We have a culture that supports women in going to their masculine side, but doesn't support women in being feminine. The most feminine thing you can do is have babies. Women don't feel like they want to have babies, and they find all reasons to justify not having babies because our culture gives them those reasons, as opposed to feeling inside the part of them that wants to have babies. They can't find it. So many women today don't want to have children. They have excuses for it. They say, oh, it's too expensive. It's this, it's this, it's this. I can't find the right man. Okay, those are all your reasons not to be feminine. Part of being feminine is to experience the feminine hormones that say, I want to have a baby. If you can't have a baby, which happened to the woman in the movie, and you could see that she was not very happy. That actress did a great job about it, but she now created a school for children and educated children. There's a part of women that don't necessarily have to make a baby, but needs to nurture children, nurture those who can't do for themselves. It's a very aspect of femininity, and a very aspect of masculinity is to nurture those who can nurture the little children. That I take care of and provide for those who can take care of the little children. Now, certainly now men can take care of little children, but it's never going to be as good as a woman doing it. It's not. It's just not going to be there. Little children, young children need mommy, and mommy needs a man taking care of her. When mommy nurtures her children and a man doesn't take care of her, then she looks to her children to take care of her. And now you've created a child that has no self-esteem at all. A little boy should not feel that I'm responsible for my mother's happy. A little girl should not feel that she doesn't have someone to take care of mom. See, little girls, they don't trust men because they didn't have fathers who were trustworthy to supply the support that mommy needed. Even if you have a good mother and father, you're still not experiencing a mother who actually can depend on a man. Depending on a man makes a man a hero, makes a man great. Little girl, could grow up with a mother who says men are wonderful, then that little girl's going to find men are wonderful. But if you have a little girl who says men are not available, then as soon as a man does something that's not perfect, she goes into, see, I knew it. I can't depend on a man. It's called an all or nothing reaction, which is a woman's unhappy. A man will have an all or nothing reaction, which is, well, if I can't make you happy, then we should just end the relationship. It's a very logical statement. I'm in this relationship to make you happy. So if what I do doesn't make you happy, then we should end the relationship. Nice logical statement, but stupid. Okay. You can be logical, but it's not always the best solution. Okay. That's a logical thing. As opposed to a better logic is to understand women and realize you can't make women happy ever. All you can do really is make a woman happier. It's her job to be happy. Say it again. It's her job to be happy. I can make her happier, but in the attempt to make her happy, I'll make her unhappy, telling her she shouldn't feel what she feels rather than support her in feeling what she feels with caring, a sense of non-judgmental understanding, a sense of respect for her process, that she needs to sort of mull things over out loud. See, men, we tend to mull things over inside and come back to feeling good. We don't have to talk about it. And of course, men who do need to talk about it are often too far on their female side, and they never really come back to their male side, talking so much about what they feel. Now, there is a time for men to talk about wounded feelings. There's a time and a place. But for women, it's every day. it's we are very, very different. When my wife died, it was devastating for me. I cried for days and weeks and months and years. Okay, waves of emotion. And now, when somebody dies in a movie, I'm remembering my wife dying and I'm crying all over again. That's okay. When you heal a wound, then even those tears are tears of love. So you feel the love and it passes very quickly, the pain of it. So, loss is a part of life. We have to all experience that. For men, if it's a big loss, then emotions are appropriate. And you go to your female side to analyze them to come back to your male side. But if little things are causing men to become emotional, then they're way too far on their female side. And for women, if it only takes big things for them to become emotional, they're way too far on their male side. And when those big things do happen, they're done. It's over. They're not going to open their heart again, which is another movie I was just watching, which the woman basically in the movie on the airplane coming over, it was a movie from India, and the husband had made his work more important than being there when she had the baby. And she asked him, to be here. And he loved her, he cared about her, but he got on the whole ego trip. I'm so successful, I'm so great, now I'm going to go to the world championship. And he neglected his family, his wife, and they had a beautiful relationship. And she's pregnant. And she says, I need you to be here when I'm going to give birth to the baby. And he says, no, I'll win the world championship when the baby comes. And that was his faulty logic. She needed him there. And because he had a special O negative blood type, there was a difficult delivery. The baby didn't get the blood type. And so the baby died because he was out of town. And so she said, this crossed the limit. I can't forgive. And she just shut down. That's a big thing. And so when a big thing happens and a woman doesn't know how to process emotions, she shuts down completely. And there's no hope at that point, except 10 years passed and he continued to pursue her. And finally, a series of events happened. They forgave each other and they fell in love again, because the love is always there if we can find it. But even the big thing, she had to go through her emotions with it. He had to change his behaviors. He had to humble himself, and his life was humbled. So this is a sense of masculinity is always humble and confident at the same time. It's a bit paradoxical. How can you be so confident to be the world champion muscle man in the world? He's a wrestler, the greatest. He could take on 50 people and beat them. You have that much confidence. And she said, it's arrogance. It becomes arrogance where you're more important than other people. So you can be totally confident, but in relationship, you can't put yourself above others. And he put himself above her, the humble man he used to be, to serve her. It was gone. And that happens to so many successful men. And where their work, it happened in my life. And of course, I was able to stop it because I understood this stuff. Where work, so many opportunities to be number one, to be number one on the bestseller list. This is my goal, but it kept happening every week, being invited everywhere, starting to neglect my family. My wife said, wait, I need you. I can't have you doing this. And so she put a stop to it. And I'm grateful for that I didn't just go with every opportunity and every big, I had a network show, and everything. And I said no to being on the show. There was a lot of things I had to say no to be the husband I started out to be. And that is a mistake many men make once they get on that success ride, because more opportunities open for you, it's like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger, and you neglect your family, you neglect their children and all that. She made sure that that didn't happen. And that's the wisdom of femininity. They know what is most important in life. It's the family, it's the love, it's the commitment, it's the caring, and it's the sharing. And as a man, I learned all that through her saying no, being upset with me, sitting on the calendar and saying no, no, no. And I had to work it through, where we had communication, where I didn't feel controlled, but feel valued and appreciated for the sacrifices I made, sacrifices of easy opportunities and success. And that was all because of her, but it was also because of me, that I could hear her and allow her to not be happy with everything I do. And that's delicate stuff, how to do that. And with more success, you're the Dr. Finance, men become very, very successful, or women become very, very successful. Egos get really, really big. Success is like a magnifying glass, and it will magnify your talents. It will magnify your gifts, but it will also magnify your neurosis. It magnifies your ignorance, and you're always right. You have to be humbled. And fortunately, I had learned these skills to process emotions. She had learned skills to process emotions so we could come back to feelings of forgiveness. And when I talk about men and emotions, I'm not saying we don't have emotions. What I'm saying is that when we're angry, when we're upset, when we're not happy, we're too far on our female side. So we have to come back to our male side and analyze, become aware of, and then analyze and dissect and let go of negative emotions and come back to forgiveness, and then come out of our cave and give more to our wives. Processing it out loud with our partners is not the best thing, by being upset with them or bothered by them or sharing all of our worries and fears with them when the next day we're not worried. I mean, why put them through that? Process it and then talk realistically about what's going on. That's always fine to do. I'm never saying men shouldn't talk, men shouldn't share, but when you're in your stuff, when you're in your imbalance, you handle that alone. When a woman is in her balance, if a man can listen and be there, she can handle it with him. If she can't, she needs a coach. She needs a journal. She needs skills on how to process those emotions more efficiently, because it does take skills. Some women are just addicted to going to a therapist, talking for an hour, feeling better, but they didn't learn anything about how they're overreacting. They didn't learn how they're misinterpreting. They didn't learn how they can solve that problem. They didn't learn how they're sabotaging their relationship. They didn't learn any of this stuff. They just feel better by talking about what they feel. Because when a woman talks about what she feels, or a man talks about what he feels, estrogen goes up. Estrogen will always help to lower a woman's stress. Estrogen will throw a man out of balance unless he's feeling really, really confident in himself. Then he can share what's going on inside. But sharing too much about your emotions and feelings, if you're a man, can weaken you. And it's doing that today in our male society. And therapists are doing it for men as well. It's more analyzing, kind of like how Freud started out, was through analysis, analyzing things and seeing that you're overreacting. And now how can you look at it differently in a more positive way? That's the analysis side. But for the female side, there should be freedom to explore out loud, not have to analyze right away, just to notice, to see what's going on and what's else. It's kind of like putting all the things on the table and then putting them back together in a neat package, which is loving and supportive and forgiving and understanding. And then coming way over to her male side, go from her female side to her male side. How am I going to solve this problem? What's practical? Is it practical for me to leave this relationship? Women often want me to suggest to them what they should do. I never do. They have the answers inside, but the answers always come from a place of wisdom, of realizing how I contribute to the problems as well. Because if you leave a relationship being a victim, which so many women or men do, you're just going to create the same thing, because you never understood why you're equally part of the problem. And having said that, on the other side, it can be the part of the problem is you keep picking the wrong people who obviously aren't the right person for you. But even then, you're in that relationship with the wrong person, then you should be able to clearly see how you made it worse. Okay, the wrong person is just the wrong person. But how do you react to the wrong person makes it really worse and worse and worse. So you have to come to a place of accountability. And that's the place men need to start out with. Okay, always come from a place that's masculine, is how did I create this problem? For women is, what is the problem? How do I feel? and then come back to find balance to go to your masculine and how am I accountable as well? How do I solve the problem? We're missing that in the world today. We're just a bunch of victims whining and complaining all the time and feeling that there's no good people out there, can't have relationships. And I'm only talking about 50% of the population. I should put that in perspective. At this point, it's about 50% who just think relationships are not worth it. They're too much trouble. And yeah, it's like a new software. You're not willing to learn it, or you can't find a teacher to do it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John. And by the way, I want to share my condolences for the loss of your wife. I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing your incredible story and everything. So, John, if you want to just maybe spend next moment just wrapping up the story, and then anything you want to say at all, and then we'll get into the questions. We're going to dive into your books. We're going to dive into a couple questions I have that tie relationship to my field, money and finance, which I'm sure you'll appreciate as well. So any last minute thoughts to bring the story full circle?
Well, since you did mention my wife, I think if we want to stay young, energy, healthy, vibrant, our brains are working, we're clear, or have energy, we're always growing. You see, children grow. That's why they have so much energy, is they're learning new things and they're growing and they're not just stuck at one level. And I have to say that, my wife dying was a major, major growth process for me. I'd say I'm twice as loving as a person after her death. Not that I would want her death for me to grow, but every mishap, it's the biggest mishap. I've had several in my life. I mean, one funeral after another, my honeymoon with Bonnie, my soulmate of 34 years. My soulmate, on our honeymoon, I got a call. My father was found dead in the trunk of his car.
Oh,
Big trauma, a huge shock.
So
just like you hear that, you're just so traumatic. And it was, and had good relationship with my dad. He's very proud of me. I was teaching my own seminars in California. He flew out from Texas 3 times to take my seminars. He was the most supportive in my family that way. And then boom, I get that call and I find out, he's dead in the trunk of his car. What happened? I'm going to stop the honeymoon. We're going to go down there. And had to get into the trunk just to go through his experience. Imagine dying in the trunk of your car. He had picked up a hitchhiker. The hitchhiker had robbed him, but didn't hurt him, just made him get in the trunk of the car and called the police to say, come and get this man. The police didn't come, called again. 3 times the police got a call and they didn't answer it. And he died in the heat asphyxiation in the trunk of his car on a Texas highway. And I had to get into that trunk and it was so traumatic, such a shock, such emotions came up inside of me. And I saw where he pulled a screwdriver, had been banging on the roof with the screwdriver, and then he'd unscrewed the back light so he could get more air. And so when I'm in there reliving my father's death, I pulled back the thing even more and put my hand out. As I put my hand out, I pulled my arm back, and my brother on the outside of the trunk said, see if you can reach around and push the button. And I reached around, pushed the button, and the trunk opened. So the potential was there for him to get out of the trunk. If he had looked at the situation from the opposite point of view, he was trying to get out rather than how to get in. And I use that as a metaphor, which actually developed the ideas of Men Are From Mars, is let's look at everything from the opposite point of view, not just from our point of view, and we can open our hearts. So that becomes a lesson I learned. I try to learn from every mishap. I try to make a pledge and a commitment from everything to look from the opposite direction. So that was a key. And then you start looking at the mysteries of the universe. My last conversation I had with my dad before I went to go off and get married was my wife, Bonnie, soon to be wife, Bonnie, we went to visit my parents, and my dad took her on a tour of the other side of the tracks, where he as a successful businessman had helped start all of the football teams, basketball teams, baseball teams for the poor people. They even have a foundation for him because he helped all the poor. And so that's sort of like my dad's pride of helping people. And so we're in the conversation in the car, and I said, now, Dad, I'm grown up and I need to give you some advice. I hear that you give hitchhikers rides all the time because he's always helping poor people. And it's not safe to give hitchhikers rides. So please don't do that. And my dad said to me, well, some men, when they retire, they go on safari. Ironically, I'm telling the story. I just came back from safari.
Yeah.
But some men, when they retire, they go on safari. For me, I like to pick up hitchhikers and help them. And that was his death, picking up a hitchhiker. And that was the last call I had with my last conversation I had with my dad. Now, the other side of this thing is often how our thoughts create reality. There's just so much in every experience of pain. There's so many wet lessons to learn. But here's my dad, when he got that, it was a Mercedes. And he had bought a Mercedes. It was one of the first in the neighborhood. It was very cool. But there was a leak in the trunk. And so he wanted to find the leak so he could repair it. Where's the leak? So he got into the trunk and he had the worker at our house close the lid. And my dad said, now, when I say open the lid, open it, because I get very claustrophobic. And so the guy was pouring water to see where the water was coming through. And my dad was getting claustrophobic in the trunk of that car where he eventually died. And he said, open the trunk, open the trunk. And the guy could not figure out how to open the trunk, because you have to turn, in the old Mercedes, you had to turn the lever here and then push the button. And the guy was turning it back and forth, couldn't figure it out. And so he said, go get my wife so she can open it. And then my mother came and opened the trunk for him. And my father said, that would be the worst way to die. And that was his biggest fear of claustrophobia. Now, why was his biggest fear of claustrophobia? Well, when he was in the womb, his brother died. He was a twin, and one of them died in birth. So he was stuck in there. And then his brother died. And then there was what's called survivor guilt, the guilt of having more than others. So you see, there's so much in psychology when you go into these painful moments of healing and opening. And then my younger brother, next was my younger brother, who was bipolar from having smoked too much marijuana. For some people, that's not a good thing. And he became bipolar, eventually shot himself, killed himself. That was a huge trauma for me. I always felt bad that I had more than my brother. There were huge lessons in that. I remember one day I just said to him, when I was so successful and he was crazy, he couldn't make anything happen, felt really bad and really depressed. And I said, Jimmy, I wish I could just give you my life, give you my success. And he said, oh, no, please don't. Please don't. I would never want to stand in front of an audience and talk. Don't do that. And that was a lesson, which is like, everybody has their journey, everybody has their level of happiness, but he wasn't able to find his. It was a sad story. And I always felt bad about it, because he was my little brother and he always looked up to me. And but who looked up to him? And so when he died, that was my big lesson, is to realize, he didn't have a fan club for him, but he always gave me that love, being his older brother. And I made a pledge to myself that I would always, anybody who ever supported me, I would make sure I support them. I wouldn't leave them behind. And that was my pledge. And then the test came. The test, that one of the most important changes in my life came from that lesson with Jimmy. And that was, I had written a book before, Men Are From Mars, one of these books up here called Men, Women, and Relationships. And that took me 3 years to write. I put everything I'd learned about men and women into that book. And it was just too thick, but an agent came to me one day. I was self-published. I couldn't get a publisher. It was a self-published, but then a publisher, finally a distribution company let me put that book out there, and it did really well without the New York publishers. In those days, you needed a New York publisher to get into all the bookstores. Mm-hmm. But a little distribution company did it, and we did really well. And then New York, an agent came, saw the success, called New York. They wanted to buy that book, and they're ready to buy it. And so I went to the little distribution company and I said, good news, New York is going to take over the book. And they say, well, that's good news for you, but not good news for us. Because every time we put out a book that's really good, sells a lot, New York takes it. And then we're left without the bestsellers. And there's a new dilemma. These are the people to help me get my first book out there. And then the second book, but it helped me get it out there, Men, Women, Relationship. And now I was going to leave them behind. So I didn't want to do that. Thought maybe I'd give you a share of the profit. And they said, well, we prefer you just let us make the book. We can make that book a #1 bestseller. It's a great book. And so he said, and I said, I just don't know. And He said, well, at least let me come to meet our team and hear our plan. So I went to the team, but in the meanwhile, I talked to every friend. I talked to my wife. Everybody said, John, New York is your dream. You should sell it to New York. You can always share some of the profits with those people and thank them. And I'm ready to go to that meeting and tell them that. And in the meeting, I felt the spirit of my brother as the president of the company was talking. He sounded just like my younger brother, saying, let us do it. And I remembered my brother, actually felt my brother's presence and my promise that I would never forget the people who helped me. And so when he said, will you let us continue with your men-women relationship book? I said, yes. My wife was shocked. My agent was shocked. We got into the elevator and my agent said to me, what are you going to do? You just letting them keep the book? You can get a New York publisher. And I smiled and I said, I'll write another one and it will be better. And that is my anchor point. Anytime in my life I go to being in that elevator, that's pure conviction, pure knowing I can do it. And that only came about because I followed my heart. I did the right thing. I'm in the elevator and suddenly had the confidence to write another book. And the last thing I wanted to do after 3 years of writing Men, Women, and Relationships was to write another book. I'm not a writer. I only wrote these books because people kept saying you should write these ideas. Other people should hear these ideas. So in that moment, she said, you can do that. I said, I can do that. I can do it better. She said, how long will it take? It'll take 3 months. All that knowledge came to me. It was done in 3 months. It was so easy to write that book. Every day I just sat down and in my mind, I was kind of rewriting the big book into a littler book. But that place of confidence, we should all look for that place where we anchored in a moment in our lives where we knew I can do this. And that's your soul talking to you. And how did I get to that place? Through the healing with my younger brother, making that commitment to help the people, having this man who'd given so much to me, my promising to help him and giving him that book and writing another one. What an amazing story. This is learning from our pain. And I have several others like that. But the idea is bringing it up because you want me to finish my story. The biggest pain I've ever felt was losing my wife. What happened because I'm able to grieve and feel the emotions of it, analyze the emotions. You feel the pain, you feel the guilt, you feel the shame, you feel the sadness, all the despair. What happens is when you go deep into your feelings, you access your soul. Soulful is deep, deep inside. And the soul is a source of wisdom. And by connecting to every time, it happened automatically because I couldn't sleep. I was in just horrible time having lost my wife.
How long ago was this, John?
That's 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. So 4 years. I say 5 because she got cancer and then it was 9 months of trying to save her and just watching her disappear. And so that was started 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. But then she died after 9 months. And then I cried and tried to listen to whatever came up inside of me. And what came up inside of me was every time I disappointed her in some way, or I made a mistake in a relationship, every time coming back, forgiving myself, forgiving her, actually things that she would do, I'd go back and forgive it. But mostly how I could have been better. It tends to be what you feel when someone dies, how I could have been better. And I reviewed my whole 32 years with her, and actually 40 years, because there's years before, how I could have done it differently, and committed myself to doing it differently. And as a result, my heart has grown even more. And I'm in this most beautiful relationship where I can love even more than I could love then. And this is the possibility with loss. And I have a wonderful book on grieving. It's called Mars and Venus Starting Over. Whether someone dies or you go through a divorce, it's so important to do a review of every mistake you could have made in that relationship, forgiving yourself, forgiving your partner. That opens your heart even more. And here's the simple concept. When you lose something, you will always appreciate it more. And in that place of appreciating it more, explore how you didn't appreciate it more and make a commitment to grow. And so now my life is even better. It was fantastic then. My love with her was great. And it's even more now, all because I've been able to go through a couple of years of this grieving process. And now I'm sleeping like a baby again and feeling great all the time, feeling younger than ever before, because I was able to open my heart more. Every loss is an opportunity to open your heart more. And it tends to automatically happen. We just don't know what to do with that immediate reaction. For example, when I used to write books on the early stages of Microsoft Word would crash all the time. And I'd be working on a chapter and not really happy with that chapter, struggling with it a bit. It would crash. And when it crashed, my reaction was, oh my God, that was the best chapter I've ever wrote. I've lost it. It's gone. It's in the ethers. That's what we as humans, we all tend to take things for granted. And then until we lose them, and then we appreciate them even more. This is one of the concepts of Men Are From Mars, even, which is men will get close to women and we can be one through making love. And then there's this tendency, as in the gorilla, to go right to sleep or to pull away. But when men pull away, it allows them to rebuild their testosterone so they can appreciate their partners more. And if women could just understand this, is that men need to pull back, like pulling back an arrow of a bow, then they can shoot fast, they can go in. It's a back and forth. And women, it's not so much that way. It's more of an up and down and up and down. For her, after making love, there's a tendency to hold on. And because the man pulls away, it kind of forces her to let go and look at other areas of her life that make her happy. Because we should never be focused on just one source of happiness when there's so many. And of course, one of those many is ourselves and our own inner explorations of letting go of negativity. And that should be what emotional intelligence teaches us. But really, while it has a lot of good stuff with emotional intelligence, it still doesn't give people the mechanics of how to go from negative within yourself to come back to love and forgiveness and positivity without having the outer world change. Then when you change, the outer world begins to change, but only if you take the first step.
That's beautiful. Thank you, John. And I empathize with you. I mean, I've been through a lot of tragedies too. It's just a crazy journey. My best friend killed himself when he was 18, and so many other things that kept stacking on top of that. And you never know like what's going to happen next. That's why you always got to appreciate life every moment. So I thank you, John, for being here. I thank you for sharing those stories. I know you didn't have to, but you did anyway, and I appreciate that. And I think the audience does too. So with that said, I'd like to move into our next segment. And we're going to ask some questions. We're going to tie in your theories and your thoughts. But what I really learned before we get to that is that you really are truly qualified to be one of the world's experts on this subject. I mean, you really put your time in from so many different levels, like from the fact that you were a marriage counselor, right? From the fact that you were studying this stuff from a kid, pretty much. You were experimenting with things like a scientist. That was a scientist experimenting with things in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And then of course you put it together with actually having a relationship for 35 years and then going through the grieving process. Like afterwards, you went full circle with this relationship and you did it successfully. So this incorporates into your knowledge bank, putting you at the top of your game.
And I have to say, for the people who are single, it was so easy to get into another relationship when you understand relationships are the best thing going. See, people that don't have a concept of how to have an amazing relationship. If you think of relationship as an amazing thing, then you draw it into your life. You're able to create it. But you have to have the skills to do it. And that's why it's important to hear these stories of people who have successful relationships and how they overcame challenges and the understanding. And then we can make our dreams come true, because ultimately, for most people, love is such an important thing. And after a while, they become jaded. It's not possible when it is possible if we grow within ourselves.
John, last part to wrap up your story. The one thing I was just a little confused on, you when you said the story about your book, and then you're like, I'll make another one, I'll make it shorter. Was that it? Was that the Mars?
That's Men Are From Mars. Men Are From Mars was the shorter version of Men, Women, and Relationships.
That's incredible.
It was. The ideas were there. And then I said, look, I'd actually already done some research on men, women, and relationships, interviewing people on what they liked about the book. And everybody liked the book very much, but nobody had finished the book. Okay. So then I realized I need to write a shorter book anyway. That was sort of in the back of my mind. So it was easy for it to come up, I think, in the elevator. I'll just write another book and it will, but I certainly didn't want to write another book until that moment came about. But it was, I say this for many writers as well. If it's in your field where you're a teacher of maybe personal growth or self-help, we learn so much and we want to give it all. And that's what I did in that men-women relationship. And I realized then you can't give it all, but you can give bite sizes of it all, the most meaningful things. And that's what I did in Men Are From Mars, and tried to apply that in these other books that I've written.
And then basically, the other part of the story was once that book took off, you went around and did tours. You were on Oprah many times and things like that, right?
Well, that's an amazing story in itself about perseverance. Okay, so I wrote that book, and it turned out that when I wrote Men Are From Mars, they did HarperCollins did a PR tour, and nothing happened. And all the media basically said, oh, we already did this with Deborah Tannen's book on gender differences, and he's just copying her. Even though my book, which was before Deborah Tannen, said all these ideas, but it just wasn't well known in the media. But I'm grateful that Deborah Tannen had done media, because it kind of opened the discussion of gender difference on another more academic level. My discussion of gender is never on an academic level. It's on direct experience and practicality and therapy. She's a linguistics. It was just theoretical, whereas my stuff touches the heart of people because they experience what I'm talking about and they see things that work right away. Many of the things will work right away. But still, I couldn't get on shows. They gave up the media tour, particularly when they did get me an Oprah show. But I was in the last 2 minutes. They brought me out on the Oprah show. so nothing happened on the Oprah show. The funny thing about it, the reason it was the last 2 minutes is Oprah had 6 people or maybe 8 people on stage, 4 extremely dysfunctional relationships. And then they're going to bring me out to fix their dysfunctional relationships. and all I had time to say is, she says, so what should these people do? And I say, well, there's no way they're going to have successful relationships because they have no understanding that men and women are different. If there was any understanding of those differences, they would behave differently. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gray. That was it. But so I had, so I got on that show. There was no response at all. So the book publishing people, Harper just dropped my PR. So now what I did for the next 6 months was do every radio show I could do. We didn't have internet then, but I had advertised in this little catalog and just did everything. We had a nice description of what I would talk about. And I'm very playful and entertaining. So the radios really liked me, and I did more and more radio shows. And then at that point, after 6 months of radio shows, I got to the bottom of the Publishers Weekly list at 13. Okay, so I'm at 13. And then the next week I was at 12. Next week I was at 11. Next week I was at 10.
Wow.
And the next week I was off. And I wondered what happened. And I called around to bookstores and everything. And how many copies of my book do you have? They say, we don't have your book. The book had actually sold out. And the publisher didn't replenish the book. It was called out of print. They all said it's out of print. So people couldn't get the book. Well, I kept promoting the book, even though it was out of print. I called the publisher, what are you, idiots? The book's on the bestseller list and you put it out of print. And they said, well, we decided that we're going to put it into paperback because we sold out all the hardbacks. We're going to put it in paperback in 6 months. 6 months? Well, it's on could be on the bestseller list. Are you crazy people? And they say, well, we printed up 200,000 paperbacks. And I said, you're not allowed to send them. I want hardback. I'm a best-selling author in hardback. I want 25,000 copies in hardback. They said no. So what can I do? So I waited 6 months, and some fortune of God came in. It wasn't the Oprah show. It was Phil Donahue's show. Phil Donahue invited me in January to do a show on gender difference. Now, what I didn't know is the producers were making a hit piece on me. Anytime they had 3 other experts saying that I'm wrong, but they did let me bring in 2 couples who had benefited from my work. So he was fair, he's very fair, but there were these hit piece people. And so I'm about to go out on the show. I found out it was a hit piece because the therapists in the makeup room were all talking about how bad my book was, that I was dangerous. Okay, I'm considered dangerous. And Phil comes in and they say, we're going to cancel the show. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we just found out it was the first attack on the World Trade Center. This is 1992.
Wow.
That in the basement, there were some bombs that went off. Phil said, we're going to do a live show. And I said, well, let's do me after the live show. He said, no, we can't do that. Yes, you can. Just come another time. I said, no, we can't come another time. Got to do it now. I was very gently persistent. Got to do it now. I got a busy schedule. I can't do it, Phil. He said, John, you don't want this audience of women. We've just had the first terror attack on America. This is not a friendly audience. I said, I don't care, Phil. I love any audience. Let me put my message out. So Phil agreed. He said, well, we can't get another audience. Keep this audience. So we kept the audience. We did the show. I was attacked. Everybody was upset with me. This is back in the day where Phil would walk around his microphone and interview everybody. And so all the women were saying I was wrong and this was terrible. And men are making excuses for themselves and men are not loving, selfish. They did the normal things women would do in those days, and which they'll still do. But I have a way of comforting them and understanding them. But in that situation, Phil Donahue, he's a man. Everything I say, men will go, yeah. So Phil ended up defending me to these women and saying, well, don't, it'd be like the cave. Doesn't your husband sometimes come home and just want to spend time alone for a while? And the woman would say, yes, he does. Just like that man says, and he shouldn't. And Phil would go, well, maybe it's because men are different and women are different. And like he said, so I ended up having Phil defend my message. And so then now the show was slated to go in February 12th on Valentine's Day. I told my publisher, now you have to give me hardback books. I want you to print up 25,000 hardback books and not put those paper books out there. Now, the reason for that is you make a lot more money on a hardback than on a paperback. I make like 80 cents on a paperback and make $4 on a hardback. Okay, so it's a huge difference, right? So 25,000 books are coming out for the Phil Donahue Show. And so it's going to be right in front of the bookstores. When you see those books in front of the bookstores, the publisher pays for that real estate. So the publisher paid to put my books out there in the front, and 25,000 books in bookstores all around America. On the day when the show aired, the books sold out, but the show was canceled. The show didn't air, but because the books were in the front, it was already been a bestseller 7 months before, it sold out. So then and the Phil Donahue said, okay, we're going to show it in a month. So now we're going to show it in a month. So the same thing, publisher printed up 25,000 copies, went into the front of the store. The show was canceled again. So 2 cancellations of the show, but the book sold out. Still 25,000 books selling out one day, twice. It didn't go on the New York Times list. Now today, that's never happened before. If you have 25,000 books sell out, you go right onto the list. Well, I didn't go off the list. Publisher, this is so unusual. So anyway, Phil said he was going to do it a month later. So it did happen on that month. The 25,000 books sold out. It still didn't go on the bestseller list. And my belief, again, is simply what I always faced in New York is there's an agenda that we don't talk about gender differences, even though on radio there was no problem, on TV there was. So then it went, in about a month after it went on the bestseller list, we sold out 25,000. They put another 25,000 out there. It went #1 on the list. It didn't go off the list for 4.5 years, maybe 5.5 on some places. So it was a phenomenal, every week sold out, 85,000 books every week selling. It was an amazing time of my life, huge success. And, people say, what does it feel like? Well, it just feels normal at that point, but it was so excited in the beginning. It was an amazing experience. And once it went #1 on the list, then Oprah started having me on the show. Then I had longer shows, and I did 18 shows with Oprah. I'd go there as her personal coach and so forth. And then suddenly in the year 2000, after my book just had gone off the list, I was never allowed on national TV shows again. And you get so big, there is an agenda in the world that in all the universities that I'm a sexist and I'm dangerous. And you can't support someone being a sexist who's so dangerous, because that's one point of view, is that it's wrong to say men and women are different. And I'm one of the major voices on this planet that says it's right to say men and women are different, not that one is less than the other. Equality does not mean sameness. Say it again, equality does not mean sameness. Equality is equal opportunity. It's equal respect. It's equal honoring. That's what we need to have, because all people are different and we want to respect that. And ironically, in a world that says, yes, everybody's different, let's acknowledge and nurture those differences, they don't allow to acknowledge the differences between men and women. And these are biological, it's reality. Is it nurture? Is it nature? It's both. We are biologically designed to be different, to fit together perfectly. Culture is there to nurture us and our thinking so that we can respect and appreciate our differences. And we had an ancient culture for thousands of years that evolved, that respected those differences, helping to bring us together to create this civilized world. But as the world became civilized, suddenly we evolved into being able to access, as a man, both my male and female sides. Women can now access both their male and female sides, but they don't know how to do it. You can't just do what you like. If you do what feels good, it's not necessarily good. I can bring out a gallon of ice cream and I'll feel good eating the whole thing. But was that a good thing to do? No. It will make me overweight. It will cause me to be depressed. It feels good. So we have to get out of the world thing. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's good for us. Because if you're way on your male side, it feels really good to go to your female side. You're experiencing, as you transition over, a sense of wholeness, and then you crash. And for women, it feels really good to go from depending on a man and depending on others to feeling independent and powerful. That feels fantastic. But then you get stuck over there and you disconnect with your capacity to even feel love and happiness and joy. And that's, you burn out. So we have today is a population of burnout women and unmotivated men to a great extent. And therefore, to compensate, we now need all these antidepressants. We know all these speed drugs, Ritalin drugs for our kids. And, the ADD drugs is just cocaine in a moderate form. We have addictions. We have video games. We have couples no longer coupling up. We have so much divorce and second marriages. They have second marriages. There's 60 to 70% divorce. Third marriage is almost 90% divorce. Why? Those people at least still want love, but they didn't learn how they're contributing to the problems. We don't have this understanding because we think that we should just do what we like, do what we feel like without any strategy, without any knowledge. Like you teach people in finance, you have to have strategies, you have to have knowledge for this. You have to be responsible. You can't just do what feels good to do.
Right.
It's not going to work.
John, thank you so much. John, so you never technically hit, this is amazing. You never hit the #1 New York Times. You didn't hit the New York Times best-selling list, but you sold all those copies.
No. I was on for 4.5 years, #1. I never went off.
Oh, wow.
Once Bill Donahue's show happened, I went to #1 and didn't go off for 4.5 years on the New York Times list.
That's amazing.
And at the end of the year, USA Today said it was the #1 best-selling book of all the books of the decade.
That's crazy.
It's the most influential book of the last 25 years of all the one of the top 10 influential, but it outsold every book in that decade.
How many books did you sell overall? Millions, I imagine, right?
Well,
50 million or something?
During that time in America, it was 10 million. When around the world, it was building up until we're way over 50 million books sold now. But now I've got like 28 books add all together.
That is amazing. You created a movement.
Well, there is, it's everywhere I go. I was in Africa and I give them my name, you're signing it, and you say, like that book? And I go, yeah, I like that book. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And they go, yeah. Then I say, I wrote that book. And they kind of go, you wrote that book? This is the guy that airplane and Tanzania, and my driver here, they all heard the book. Okay. In China, it's more famous than in America. Oh. Thousands of people come hear me talk in China. In America, not so much. If I have a good promoter here, I do. But Men Are From Mars, it's sort of gone its crest in America. It still sells. It's still out there. People are using it. Anybody's going to buy a book on relationships already bought it, in a sense. It's just in the culture. But does it mean it's still just a drop in the bucket? It's still just a drop in a book. 50 million people is out of 300 million people. And these are mostly the older generation. The younger generation is not hip to this book as much. Although all the time young people say, yes, my mother had that by her book stand every night. Yes, my parents had that book. Yeah, I really helped my parents. Oh, they got back together because of that book. They don't realize that they need to read that book.
Right. That's funny. Well, so John, you never got back on national TV after that. incident?
No,
in 2000?
ever since 2001. I was
Wow.
on CNN, I was on MSNBC, I was on Fox, I was on national news, I was all over the place. And then in one day, it was off.
What have you been doing since then to
Oh,
attract
I do
attention?
podcasts. I'm always
Yeah.
talking on the internet. During the shutdown, I did 300 hours of talking, and then I took it
Wow.
all off because I was overexposed. But my TED Talk, several million people on that one. The message still grows. It's still out there.
That's a
Just
brilliant TED Talk too, by the way. I watched the whole thing.
it's a fun talk. People should see the TED Talk. Now, there's two TED Talks. One is 1,000 times better than the other. It's the one with the red shirt with millions of views. That TED Talk, I'm talking to an audience of people who have relationships.
24 minutes, right? The one that's 24 minutes.
Yeah, the 24-minute one. The other one I did in San Francisco with a group of people that didn't have relationships, the non-traditional group. My message is not for the non-traditional group, but for people that are into traditional marriage, want to have a family, want to have children, want to have passion, want to have love between heterosexual relationship. This is the message. Otherwise, that's not my expertise. So that audience didn't really need to hear what I had to say. They have their own teachers.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you. All right, folks. We're back here. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. You're on the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We got John Gray here, Dr. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, a book that sold over 50 million copies, and so many other stuff. Actually, we're going to talk about his books a little more. We just went into his story, went into his books, we went into a lot of stuff. But my next question, John, is actually not really a question. It's an opportunity. It's can you tell us just a quick summary? I know we already talked about your books, but like in a minute or less, can you summarize those 17 books or I believe 20 books for us? You don't have to say them all, but as many as you can fit in 1 minute.
Well, we've got the basic one everybody should read is What You Feel You Can Heal. That's my book on emotional intelligence that gave rise to my learning how men and women are different. That gave rise to a book called Men and Women Relationships, which then that was the baby that they turned into Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, the classic book everybody should read. It's very easy to read. Then from there, Mars, Venus in the Bedroom was a really big hit. Practical skills there. Then there's Mars, Venus Together Forever, marriage skills. There's Mars, Venus on a Date, how to find the right partner for you. If you suffer if your relationship ends, it's painful, how to heal the pain to create the better relationship in the future. That's called Mars and Venus Starting Over. There's Mars and Venus in Love, which gives examples of couples using these ideas to make their relationships better. Then there's How to Get What You Want What You Have. It's applying the principles for success, the male and female sides of us, how to heal our hearts. There's a lot of little books on romance and so forth, but those are the main ones until I wrote Why Mars and Venus Collide, which is explaining how stress affects our relationships and what we can do about it. That then evolved into took 6 years to write Beyond Mars and Venus, which is a book that understands the differences between men and women, the biggest misunderstandings, the hormonal foundation of them, and how to support the hormonal rebalancing within your partner and within yourself. So those are my basic books there.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, folks. Definitely check out his flagship book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he just told the story. If you want to go back and check it out, that was incredible. Over 50 million copies sold all across the world. So, John, next question I have for you, because you were interviewed by people that are incredible. I mean, you're all over the national television. Well, for me, I being an interviewer, what I really appreciate is being interviewed by Oprah. Now, I always wanted to know, what does it feel like to be interviewed by Oprah? And you were interviewed many times.
Fun. I enjoyed it very much. She's really very, very great interviewer. She really steps inside your world. My favorite interview with Oprah is where it's after about 3 times I was on her show helping people. Then she had me, she called me up one day and she said, John, I want to do a show, just you and me. I'm going to produce it. See, normally they have producers that organize everything and Oprah just steps in. She says, I'm producing it. Nobody else is there. Just tell me, what is the most important thing we can help my listeners? It was so sweet of her to do. And so that's one where I get to sit on stage with her, where she's reading the book, pointing out things. And in those cases, for anybody that ever gets on that show or a show like that, she did most of the talking, and I says, yes. If she says it, you just let her talk. And at the end of the show, she held the book up and she says, I promote all the books, but if there's one book of all the ones I promote, this is the one book everybody should read. And then her people said that was too big of a commercial for me, and they took it off. It aired in a few cities, but it was a conflict of interest with their advertisers. But it was amazing. She could really promote something when her heart's behind it, and she really gave me a lot of support.
John, that's really funny that you said that, because now like she's got her own media network and stuff, and social media is invented. If you look at right now, she's promoting this book. It's called Something of Water. I don't remember the exact name, but it every day almost, it seems like she's reading the book. Here you see her on a beach, I think a beach chair or something. She's promoting it to Gail King, her friend. Like that would not have been possible, I'm imagining, back when time you're telling that story, because she had to answer to higher authorities. Like having her own social media, she can do whatever she wants now.
Yeah, well, she can do what she wants, but she could pretty much promote any book she wanted back then. They just didn't put that last little section in because somebody said it was too over the top.
Yeah.
And, maybe it was too unfair to all the other authors that go on. So that was, but anyway, she gave me tremendous support for up until the year 2000. And just like with every other national TV show, for one moment I was on everywhere, then I was gone and not allowed to be on. And people, why aren't you on? I said, I don't know why. But what's interesting, we talked a little bit about my rise of popularity with Men Are From Mars. Is in the print interview, I never received, for the whole time I was a #1 bestseller, 5.5 years on the New York Times list, I never received a positive print interview. And New York Times never did an interview with me either, until I did my Broadway show. And then in my Broadway show, we asked them not to, and then they did. We didn't want, because it wasn't a normal Broadway show. There were no props, there was nothing. There was just me and the biggest theater on Broadway, and people loving it. And they did a scathing review of that. In the print interview, there's 3 types of interviews you get. You get a love letter, you get a pissing match, or you get a hit piece. And all I got the whole time primarily was hit pieces, a few pissing matches, and no love letters. And occasionally now I get a love letter, but rarely in the print interview. I'm very much, look, when Men Are From Mars was so successful, I got death threats. I had people calling me, I had people hating me. And then I had 10 times more people loving me. Wherever I went, people came up to me in the airports. I'm traveling all the time saying, you saved our marriage. Many people would say, we were divorced. My husband read the book. We came back, we got back together. We're happy family now. I mean, truly saved marriages and also brought marriages back, which was surprising to me because I never thought my seminars would do that. I didn't know, but I got so much feedback, and I still get it. I still get it all around the world.
That's amazing. And I was reading some of your feedback you received on like YouTube and your books and stuff. I actually went down into the reviews, and it was exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to ask you though, John, is it possible though? Is it possible this whole thing was off? I mean, is it possible that men are from Venus and women are from Mars?
Well, again, is it possible? No. If we, according to terms, if we say Venus is masculine, then men are from Venus. There's something called masculinity. And now we know biologically, masculinity is directly related to your testosterone levels. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at some of the boys that feel that they're not masculine, their testosterone levels are dramatically low. Their estrogen levels are high. So there's qualities of estrogen and there's qualities of testosterone. But biologically, if you're not happy and you're a man, your testosterone is low. If you're a man and your testosterone is low and your estrogen, the female hormone, is high, you'll be angry or fearful. The same thing for women. If their testosterone is high, they're unhappy. If their estrogen is low, they're depressed. So think of it like this, simply put, and you can go online, do a Google search for healthy hormone levels. For women, women need to make 10 times more estrogen to be happy, 10 times more than a man. And they need 20 times more to have an orgasm than a man. Okay, so this is like reality, that's female. And then male side of it, men need to make 10 to 40 times more testosterone other than a woman. Otherwise, they're depressed. And a man needs to have the 10 times more, at least 10 times more testosterone. And then his masculine qualities come forth. If he's depressed, irritable, or has a heart attack, his testosterone levels are dramatically low. The #1 reason for male heart attack, always consistent with a male heart attack, is low testosterone.
Wow.
Cholesterol levels, no. Half the men who have heart attacks have high cholesterol, half have low cholesterol. That means statistically has no importance at all. But there is importance to cholesterol. There's two types. There's what's called oxidized cholesterol, and that happens when men's testosterone levels are low. Whenever a man is experiencing cortisol levels in his body, his estrogen levels are too high and his testosterone is going down. For a woman, when she's experiencing cortisol levels in her body, her testosterone levels are rising and her estrogen levels are going down. Do you see the distinction? It's a little more complicated. There's another source of stress for women is when their estrogen levels are too high compared to their progesterone levels. After a woman ovulates, her progesterone has to be higher than her estrogen. But if her testosterone levels soar, then she gets something called estrogen dominance, where her progesterone levels are going too low, because when women make testosterone, and they do need to make testosterone, just not as much as men. When a woman makes testosterone, her progesterone levels are used up. And so women, when they're suicidal, are depressed or anxious at one part of the month, it's usually because they've used up their progesterone, making testosterone. Whereas at another time of the month, on the way to ovulation, all depression in women is low estrogen. So they're a bit more complicated than us, which is why they didn't do big studies on women, because the outcome is very different depending upon what day of the month it is for the woman in the study. So that's why most of the research was done on men. But when you look at male hormones, what you'll see is that, I mean, simply put, the foundation of my research on this is simply when a man's football team is winning, his testosterone levels go up. When his team loses, his testosterone levels go down and he becomes irritable and grumpy and depressed. All depressed men have low testosterone. All angry men, here's the news, have high estrogen at that time. You see, estrogen is the emotional need. It's when you're in your emotions and your testosterone is low, you have angry emotions or fearful emotion. That's called fight or flight. You can measure fight or flight by cortisol levels. When cortisol levels go up, a man's testosterone is low, his estrogen is high. This is biologically. All men are from Mars, all women are from Venus, in that playful way of looking at it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John. Great response. John, what do you like to do for fun? Like, do you have hobbies, or, I know you like to travel.
Well, I travel, I teach, I entertain. You have to realize I'm having a lot of fun now. I'll be teaching a class this weekend. It's a lot of fun for me. So I'm a student. That's a lot of fun. I read books. That's a lot of fun. My biggest fun, that's not your normal kind of fun, is meditation. So I meditate from 2 to 6 hours a day. I'm a master meditator. I can go into deep states of meditation, and I create, I dream all these ideas up. I'm always learning and growing, answering questions. I still have a counseling practice. I do that for fun. People come in with problems and I get to help solve them. And usually I learn. For me as an intuitive, there's such thing as an intuitive, you connect with people. When a person has a problem, they're denying the solution within them, and the solution then appears to me. It doesn't come from me. I learn all things from my clients. If they have a problem, we only have problems when we're disconnecting from our higher self, which is wisdom. And so if they're not connecting to their higher self tells me the answer. So literally, I get all these answers through my clients. I learn all the ideas of Men Are From Mars by having couples in front of me, mainly women, with their problem. What is it, the higher self, they're not listening to within themselves? I would hear, and then I would help to explain that in practical terms. So that's the benefit of meditation, is meditation allows you to be creative, allows you to be intuitive, allows you to feel humble, allows you to feel confident, allows you to empathize with people. It has so many benefits. It brings joy into your life, taking things lightly and also taking things in a heavy way. We have serious problems, but we can also be light about them. We have the ability to empathize with people. And then comes the ability to have charisma, which is to draw people in. And when you can draw people in, there's that whole book. I was in that book as well, The Secret, and the movie The Secret. I was one of the people.
You were in The Secret?
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm one of the shortest parts of the movie The Secret. The reason for that is I explained the whole idea of law of attraction, but I also explained the importance of exploring emotions, recognizing that life is not just focusing on the positive, but it's just as much focusing inside on anything that's keeping you from being positive, which is your negative emotions, and how to purge yourself of those so that you're open to receiving more. What people didn't learn when they saw the movie The Secret is that the woman who produced it, prior to that, she was massively disturbed. She was depressed. She was anxious. She has eating problems. She hit bottom But when people can actually go deep into the painful parts of their soul and you able to purge that through self-help techniques, which are not in that book, then you rise up and you fill up and you have positive thinking. But to sustain positive thinking in your life, you have to also sustain a positive attitude about your negative emotions. You also have to exercise. You also have to have a good diet. You also have to have loving relationships. You can't hold back. You have to find forgiveness. So my section had too many other things other than just focusing on desire and imagine imagine that happening. That happened for me. I talked about that whole time when I'm on Men Are From Mars Rising as a bestseller for so many years. On every plane flight, my meditation was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, #1 biggest selling book in the world, and feeling it. See, that's the power of attraction, is when you can have a desire that comes from your soul, and then you can imagine it coming true. How would it make you feel? And be in that state of absorbing how it makes you feel. That's what pulled it in. But for 8 years, maybe 4 years before that or so, I'm practicing imagining having that success and how does it make me feel, and exploring the positive emotions of how it makes me feel. So there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes in terms of my many books, in terms of, how to get what you want and want what you have. That's a secret in life. Many people want more and they get more, but they're never happy with what they get. They just keep wanting more and more and more. Other people are happy with what they have, grateful for what they have, but they don't get more because they're happy with what they got. The key is they feel grateful for what you have and at the same time want more. And how can you want more if you're grateful for what you have? Want more for others. And that's called being of service. Always want to be of greater service to the world. So you asked the question, what my fun is. My work is very much my fun, but there's a lot of range to that. But the deeper part of that is my meditation. And again, I leave out one of my best books is Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. Sex is an amazing experience for me because I teach enlightened sexuality.
Why did I have a feeling you're gonna add that as an answer?
Yeah, well, I got to put that into it, and I have a lot of it. Okay, I mean, the older I get, the more time I have in my schedule, because I'm not writing books right now. I might start one, but I have more time, and that's more time for sex. But there's so much scientific knowledge. I can now teach my message about sex. But if you have too much sex, you'll lose interest in sex over time. If you don't have enough sex, you'll lose interest in sex over time. So biologically, the research has shown that with 25-year-olds, okay, this is where the research is. And I couldn't teach this before because I sound like a Puritan. But if a guy has sex on Saturday night with his partner, and then he has sex, his testosterone will go up, but it will come back down to his baseline. Now, keep in mind that for the average man, his baseline from 20 years old is going to keep going down the rest of his life. Now, mine is 50 to 100% higher than when I was a young man. And there's reasons for that. It's the way I have sex, and also love sex. When sex is only a tool to open your heart up for more. And when sex is a tool for loving your heart up for more, there's different things happen. And I'll briefly explain them. But biologically, what they found in these studies, the Japanese did them, which is if you have sex on Saturday night, and then on Tuesday, your testosterone levels will basically, as a man, will stay at baseline all the time until you're having sex, and then they'll go up a bit. Well, if you have sex on Saturday night and you don't ejaculate for 6 days, on the 7th day, your testosterone will increase 50% to 400%. Okay, that's called having sex like it was in the beginning. Remember, sex in the beginning is based upon high dopamine levels, which will raise your testosterone levels 50% to 100% to 400%, depending on your biology. So that's what women want. And if you do that, then women's estrogen goes up much higher. So it's a basic biology effect. And that's been proven scientifically as well. So when couples will start having sex, 3 times a week, then it goes to 2 times a week, then it goes to 1 time a week. But generally, they're trying to make it twice a week. The testosterone levels will continue going down over time till they're not having sex, rather than going up where they can enjoy sex more, but not as much sex. Then I teach, once you've got that down where your testosterone levels are back to being 50% higher than the average for your age, now you can practice another kind of sex, which you might call orgasm without ejaculation. And then you can go for hours when you have the occasion, where you have time and whatever, and the woman is interested in doing hours only because your testosterone level never goes down. So mine never goes down. It's always 50 to 100% higher than when I was a young man. And when I have sex, then it goes up to 400%. So it goes even higher because I don't ejaculate in sex. So that's something men can learn to do. A monkey will always ejaculate. So a monkey brain is having sex, you will ejaculate to make a baby. But if you're not making a baby, why ejaculate? You can train your body not to ejaculate, not to stop the ejaculation, not to pull it back, but to basically, when those last 3 strokes are going to make you ejaculate, at that point, you just let your body shake the way it would normally shake to ejaculate. What there is a tension builds up that has to be released. When your estrogen goes too high for a man, a tension will build up because her body can't reach, the woman's body can't continue to receive the energy because women receive in waves. And if you're just going straight at it, you're going to ejaculate. So the average for men is 2 to 4 minutes of intercourse, and then the tension builds, and the ejaculation is the release of tension. So go for a couple of minutes of intercourse, and then you just, the same movement your body makes to release the tension in ejaculation, just do that before the tension is built up. So you release it through love, through expressing love. So the point of it, you always keep in mind, I'm not trying to have orgasms, I'm not trying to ejaculate, I'm trying to feel more love. And then when you start to get close to an ejaculation, 3 strokes before, you just let your body do the release, and that's called edging. And when you edge, the body will release the tension, and then you start again. And you don't have to stop when you're shaking, you're still moving inside of her. But then sometimes you want to stay inside of her. It was interesting. They actually showed Robert Redford in this out of Africa movie when they were making love. I thought it was so curious because there's only one little scene where he's inside of her, they're in bed naked, and he's on top of her, and he says to her, "Don't move. Don't move." That's because what he was doing was practicing not ejaculating. And so he didn't know the technique. All you have to do is just shake off the energy. You can keep moving, shaking it out, and also then expressing in words. When you use words to express your love for your partner, now you're pulling energy up to the prefrontal cortex through the heart. So why do I love you? But just saying those words does very little unless the woman is also receiving those words. So for her, it's a practice of her saying to him, "Do you love me?" And him saying, "Yes, I love you." "How much do you love me?" "What are the ways you love me?" Like the great poets, let me count the ways I love you. And so you say these things as you're getting close to the energy building up. Now the energy has a chance to come back up to the top, then go back down. And it's an ongoing experience where it doesn't end. So then you just choose to end. Usually her body she'll say she's done, and then you just stop because you're not addicted to the ejaculation. Most men, until you practice for about 3 months, you'll still be addicted to the ejaculation. It's one of the biggest addictions there is. Nature wants you to ejaculate and make a baby. But if your intention is not to make a baby, but you're still making a baby, it's a conflict between your higher self and your lower self. So the lower self rides the higher self is in control, but you're not ever stopping it. You're allowing it to move in a pace that allows it to build. So think of it like a wave and a wave and a wave, and it gets higher and higher, and there's never any end, but you just choose to end because her body has received. And for a woman, she becomes multi-orgasmic, and he is multi-orgasmic, and there's no end to it, but then you choose to end when she's done.
That is a brilliant dissertation on this subject.
It takes practice for guys.
Yeah.
I coach guys on how to do this because there's a lot more to it. Like what happened, this happened. But I gave us a short summary of it. There's another aspect just for men when you're having sex. Almost every man wants to be able to last longer.
John, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure because we've got a few more questions here.
Okay, we'll go to the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Great responses so far. John, this is an important question. We're going back to the basics. Speaking of basics, in 1 minute, like approximately, why are relationships even important? Before we get to the next question, like why even bother? Why even have relationships?
It's a beautiful, beautiful question, and I feel like I'm now an activist for marriage. People have forgotten why marriage is so important. When you have a marriage, you see, as a human being, Dr. Maslow explained levels of need. There's a survival need. So if you're in the level of poverty and whatever, you don't have these modern day problems, okay? If you're a woman and you're pregnant, you need a man to protect you. You need a man to provide for you. And when you feel I need someone, your heart opens with love. When a woman needs a man and then responds with love, appreciation, trust, acceptance, when she does that, that's what opens a man up to his female side, so he can now feel nurturing feelings towards her. Without a woman loving you, fulfilling, we'll start again. Without a woman feeling I need a man, men do not know what love is. It's when a woman can need a man and he feels that need and she appreciates him, that's what opens a man's heart to provide more for her. It gives him meaning, it gives him motivation. Every man who's married, every men who are single, who have lots of money, what are they doing? They're taking drugs, they're addicted to porn, it's one night stands, and they're not happy, and they die younger than married men, and they're not happy. Okay. It's a like happy eating ice cream and then feeling depressed and empty. My life has no meaning and purpose. Purpose and meaning is so important for testosterone levels. If there's a fire, my testosterone goes up to solve that problem. But it's not a personal. It doesn't produce estrogen. Because if you have both testosterone and estrogen, what you have is the alchemy of your whole self. So as a man, we have a female side, but we have to be dominant male and then bring in our female side to be whole. For a woman, she is a woman, but she has a male side. And you can see this just in terms of biological balancing hormones. When a man provides for a woman, his testosterone goes higher than a man serving a client. Okay, it's the biology of intimacy. So at a need of survival, you need a man, and a man is needed. At the biology of security, okay, which is you got your survival handled. Now you've got issues of protection. A woman needs a man for protection to provide. There's a chemistry that creates well-being, a balancing of hormones in our body. Then at the next level, we need to feel part of something that's creating a family. Now you can create non-biological family. You can be in a group, a community, a religion, an activist group or whatever. The problem with activist groups is they bond through being angry. If you bond by being angry, you're just a victim and you're always stressed out. Okay. It's just, you bond, it feels good to bond with, we're against them kind of a thing. But it's not a peaceful, happy, fulfilled life. It's an angry life. It's a dissatisfaction life. And that you want to have that life, but they get caught in it. Because when you're dissatisfied, you also produce dopamine, and dopamine is a drug addiction. So people who are out, upset all the time about the world and worrying about this and this and that, they're addicted to that. You put them in an MRI scan and it's looking like they're taking cocaine. Focus on negativity is addictive. And so we get that addiction. So we have our group feeling where we all have the same upset, or we all have the same mission and purpose. That's a positive aspect of it. So these are needs that we have, the need of belonging. But once you're an adult, you're beyond those needs. You're capable of doing it yourself. So then you have a need to be self-sufficient, to be responsible for how you feel. People aren't taught how to do that, but to be self-sufficient. But once you have a sense of who you are, your next need comes, and this is around 30 years old where your brain is capable of this, is to be intimate with someone. I can connect with you, but still be in touch with me. So what you'll see is a lot of psychological problems couples have is called people pleasers, is that I don't know what I need, but I'll give to you what you want. And if I give you what you want, I'll be happy. But people don't take care of their own needs. How can I be happy on my own is a prerequisite for how can I be happier with you? Because if you want to be happier than anybody else, you in a relationship as a man where you can provide what that woman needs to become happier, you will become happier. So that's one aspect of the importance of relationship. Another part of the importance of relationship is biology rewards you with good feeling brain chemicals when you do something that promotes the progression of life. When you can make babies, when you can produce the hormones that make babies, you feel great. And then you have a family. So many people get old and they don't have a family, they're empty. It's such a key thing. I remember there was a woman when I was a young man, and she told me, one of these best-selling authors who I met, #1 bestseller. And she says, I said, tell me what I need to know in life. And she said, the most important thing is don't stay single. Because when you get old, you want that family is there to love and support you. That's your success in life. And most people, when they get older, they say on your deathbed, you regret the time you didn't spend with your family. That usually applies to men, but now it applies to both men and women. Because women are off on their male side too, chasing happiness outside of within their heart. Then once you have the foundation of a relationship, people trust you more. You will be more successful. All success is based upon first finding yourself, but also having the world trust you and be open to you. You know, I'm one of the trustest people in the world when you look at the numbers behind me. But when you have big numbers, you have people who don't like you as well. That's part of the whole thing. But it's huge, the amount of love that comes to me, because I did the work to give love to my wife. And all success comes, you become a success magnet when in your own personal life, you can have people who truly love you and support you at a deeper level of intimacy. Now, you know, I was read somewhere there's 3 persons inside of everyone. There's your public persona. It's what people see you as. Okay, that's one part of who I am. Another part of me is what my friends know. They know my private life. They all see me and everything. And they all say it's amazing. John is who he says he is. But then there's a third persona, which is your secret life. It's your secret life, the person you're married to who knows your secrets and still loves you. That's a foundation of self-esteem, because we're flawed. We make mistakes. We have problems. And when somebody can know that about you and still love you and think you're amazing and still be there for you, that's the biggest boost of feeling I am loved. So in a sense, how do we know who we are so we can share ourselves with the world? A big part of that is every morning, as a metaphor, I wake up and I brush my hair. This is who I am. I look at myself. This is who I am. I'm John Gray. I'm this. So I have a mirror to show me who I am. That's what relationships are. And the more intimate they are, the better mirror they are. And that mirror can see me as wonderful. My wife would say, I'm generous, I'm giving, I'm forgiving, I'm creative, I'm helpful. She admires my character. So I've got that at the basis of my foundation. It's right there. All of us are always looking for recognition, reassurance that we're lovable. Everything we do is, and when you can have that, I get reassurance that I'm lovable at the deepest level of who you are. It's such an amazing support for you to give yourself to the world without fear. You know, no fear, just safety and revealing who you are to the world, and who you are has so much energy to give to the world. That's all your potential when you're in a intimate relationship. If you're not in an intimate relationship, you still can be happy in your life. There's people happy, but not nearly close to happier. So that's the point of being in an intimate relationship. You grow, you get to see the worst part of yourself. See, there's nobody that can upset me more than my wife. she could just, you know, a glance, a cutting description could have a big button. Now, you know, I'm 72 years old now, so things don't bother me. I know who I am. I don't question myself. I know I'm lovable. I don't have to prove I'm lovable. I can be myself. That all grows through years of my marriage with Bonnie, because Bonnie was no perfect person either. She'd have reactions of disapproval. She'd get upset with me. She'd say, you're working too hard. You shouldn't do this. You don't look good tonight. Why aren't you dressing up? You're not as attentive as you used to be. You know, and you learn, you hear those things and you look at yourself and you go, okay, what adjustment can I make? As opposed to feeling controlled, let me hear, and how can I be better? So you look in that mirror. Now, some relationships don't allow you to do that because the mirrors are like, the magic, the mirrors in the carnival that are distorted. So you have in a relationship and your partner doesn't reflect back to who you are. So you work at finding a loving relationship and creating a loving relationship where the mirror really reveals what a wonderful person you are, and also the not wonderful part of you. I mean, for years, Bonnie would say, you're just so arrogant, and walk out of the room. What am I to do? Am I just say, well, then I'll divorce you? Well, that's foolishness. Well, maybe I am arrogant. Let me look at that. And most successful people have confidence, and there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And confidence is, look what I can do. I'm amazing. I change lives all the time. I know what I'm talking about. And arrogance is, if you disagree with me, I'm not going to hear you at all. But more importantly, arrogance is, I'm better than everybody. And I'm not better than everybody. I'm better at what I do than a lot of people, without a doubt. But who I am, I'm still a human being. There's a humility to me. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to grow. And most importantly, my wife has wisdom that I don't have. That's the male-female relationship. Men often have a logical perspective that a woman doesn't have. And a man and a wife always have an intuition and a wisdom. And the key thing around that wisdom is the importance of family, the importance of relationship, which is why we have this question. Is why are relationships important? And so many women are so on their male side, they've given up on relationships instead of realizing it's through relationships that another person that you can be happier than you can be on your own.
Oh, what an ending. I love that. Thank you. So that ties into the next question. Intimate relationships, right? You mentioned intimate relationships. What is the connection between what you've learned about intimate relationships and business relationships, bringing it back to money. Like, what is that relationship between relationships, these different kinds of relationships, especially business partnerships, LLCs, all that stuff? Like, where's that connection come in? Maybe a minute.
The work world is primarily not intimate. The work world is goal oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that. One is not better than the other. The power of being in a successful work relationship is that you can provide for a woman to experience her feeling safe to open up to you. That's the potential for her loving all of you. Because when you feel loved as a man, or as a wife going out to be successful in the world, that love provides a foundation for other people to trust you. See, in business, it's all about trust, getting people to trust what you have to offer and being trustworthy to earn that trust. So you find your trustworthiness at the depth of your soul in intimate relationship. You get a mirror that says, you are trustworthy. You're an amazing guy. John is so generous. You know, people, I used to love for people to ask my wife, what's it like to be married to John? Because I get this big, all these wonderful accolades. You know, John's amazing. He does this. He does this. He's just what he says on the stage. So many people are not what they are in public. They're completely different. They're the opposite. John is who he says he is and who he appears to be. And, you know, that when you have a wife that feels that way about you, you have an aura around you. You go into the workplace and you not only do you have people automatically will start to trust you because you're trustworthy to your family and your people, but also you have skills that you've developed in your intimate relationship so that you can use those skills in the workplace. So what does that look like, practically speaking? And there was a learning curve for me. Okay, there was a naiveness in me that everybody's trustworthy like me. If you're really trustworthy and you're really sincere, you assume everybody's that way. Well, in the work world, not everybody is that way. There is such a thing as the sociopaths out there that literally are out to take from you and thinking and feel justified in it. So there isn't a sense of fairness in the workplace. We create, you know, you spend your life looking for someone who really loves you, wants to care for you. In the work world, that's not the case. You're looking for someone who's going to be effective and solving your problems to a great extent. You know, you can be a nice person, but if you can't promote me, I can't hire you to promote me. You'd have to have skills. So it's sort of cutthroat in a sense. We want to blend these worlds. All my people I work with, we have relationships with and friendliness with and so forth. But the dynamic of the workplace, it's not about me. It's about serving other people that you're not in love with, you don't care about, but you see they're human beings, have dignity, you want to be of service to them, and you want fairness, win-win. And that's an attitude that will ultimately, in the end, wins everything, because you have good relationships that build on good business relationships. But as an example of how hard that is to create win-win relationship is in my work, you know, I had lots of contracts, movie contracts, work contracts. I used to have a health food store, nutritional contracts. I also have nutrition for healthy relationships that I developed and written books on that as well, and used to have a whole website with all the best nutritional products and how you can overcome all these basic problems of depression and anxiety. Because one aspect of healing and being happy is your relationship. Another one is your relationship to nutrition. You have to have good nutrition in your body. And I became aware of that because when you're traveling, you're going to eat junk food. Traveling is all GMO. Traveling is all unhealthy food. And yet I wanted to eat some food. So I would take nutritional supplements so I could stay healthy during that time. During the lockdown, I stopped all nutritional supplements because I have an organic store and I could eat healthy. I don't need that stuff if I'm really eating healthy. But when I'm not, I need those extra supplements. So it's having those healthy. Got a little lost when I went into my supplement. What was my question you asked me?
Oh, yeah, it's about tying back to business relationships.
Oh, business relationships. So business relationships. In my business relationship, what I did is I promoted other people's products that I tested out. I created a wellness center. I want to be ethical about everything I do. So before I would promote a product, I'd recommend it to people and say, tell me your feedback. And I'd find the best feedback on certain products, and then I would promote those. It wasn't all just for me. It was my store was promoting, and I created videos and I explained, if you have this condition, you know, if you're depressed, these are some good things to do. If you have anxiety, this is a good thing. It's that attitude of being of service, and a personal relationship cultures that within us so that we're not selfish. And I was going to give you this example when I'm doing these contracts. That's how I got off track. And I talked to my lawyer, and these are San Francisco lawyers. They're highly paid lawyers, you know, so I want you to write up a contract for me with these people that's fair, that it's a win-win, because I don't know what's fair. And, you know, it's So how much do I get? What do they get? What's the percentages? How's it done? What's the correct way to do it? And my lawyer said to me, and this is in our legal system, I can't tell you what's fair for them. I can only get the best for you. I said, but just tell me what a good contract would be for both of us. I cannot give you that information. I cannot write a contract that's good for you and good for them. Why?
That's amazing.
And the reason for that is you could come back and sue me for giving that person more than they're due. And their job is just to get as much for you as they can get, which is the neurosis of our society, the way the legal system's set up, which is it's all me, not me and you. But that attitude of me and you is cultured through a love relationship, because the work world itself can be so impersonal, because it is bottom line. I mean, I can't keep hiring you if I'm not making any money through your service. So you have to cut people off. It's not personal, but we can't keep doing this. So that's one aspect of the work world, is it's for you to find your way and make your money. In the home, it's interesting, the two different worlds. One world is the personal world. You get more if you need more. Like you have one child who's sick, they get more attention. One child has more emotional issues, they're going to get more of your time and attention. The other child that's more well-balanced is going to get less. But in the work world, the other side of this is the person who works the hardest or the most effective, or who produces the results, who has the competence, who has the skill, they get more. And if you don't have the skill or the competence or the commitment, the willingness to take risks, to work hard, you get less. That's the reality. You do more, you get more. And what we're trying to do today is create some kind of artificial world where everybody gets the same. If everybody gets the same, let me explain this. You know, I teach in communist China. They tell me the whole story. And also I know men. But when you get the same as others, why should I bother working harder if I'm going to get the same as the guy who's sitting doing nothing? It just builds resentment, and production goes down. Society goes down when people don't have the potential to earn more based upon their efforts and their skill and what they put forth. That has to be there. At the same time, a society needs to have those who can't produce more for whatever reasons. There's so many different reasons. You're born that way, you're psychologically, your parents are divorced, you didn't get education, you didn't have opportunity, you didn't get an inheritance, you don't have the right color skin, whatever it is. If you have less, you have handicaps, we'll put it that way, you get more help, you get more free help. But when you give free to a man who can do something or a woman who can do something, they get it for free, they become lazy. No motivation at all. And everybody is unique in that balance of their male and female side. But the male side of us needs education, encouragement, support to take action, to follow through with risk. And if they don't have if they're not put in front of something that needs what they have to offer, they will become depressed. Their testosterone will go down. And if women have to do it all themselves, you know, it's like, this is what happened today. They're not interested in marriage. They don't want to make babies. Japan, basically, the population is going to go down. Everybody's worried about overpopulation. That's not happening today. Population is going down everywhere. It's a serious problem of population going down. And yet we keep saying, oh, we shouldn't have more people. Yes, we need more people on this planet. There's plenty of resources on this planet to support everybody. But everything is upside down in what's being taught. We need more people. The amount of people, amount of marriage, amount of children is going down, down, down.
John, so just last question on this point. So how can we make money? How can someone make money learning all the things that you know? So in other words, how can someone make money understanding the difference between the way men and women think?
All right, so here's some bottom line with it, which is if you're working with women and you're selling something to a woman, one way of making money is you're selling, right? You're selling securities, you're selling a product, you're marketing something. That's the basis of a lot of our business success. You're selling. If you want to sell to somebody, you're on your male side, they're on their female side of receiving. So whether it be a man or a woman, but mainly with women even more, if they're on the receptive side, you have to build trust with them so they will trust you. How do you have a woman trust you more? Listen to her more. Just like I tell husbands, listen more than giving solutions. If you're with a man, let him know right away, I can solve that. Yeah, we'll do this. I've done this before. I've accomplished this. Look at these people I've worked with. I've done this. I've done this. Build yourself up with your confidence and which may even look like arrogance. That's okay with another man. A woman will pick it up right away and not trust you. She wants to feel not that you're so important, that she's important. Certainly credentials and success is a part of it for a woman, but more importantly, to build trust with women, get her to talk about her concerns, get her to talk about her issues, what's important to her, what's not important to her, what's her history with this. In a sense, you're doing a therapy session with her. Financial consultants are like good therapists, okay? They get you the person to talk. And when you're with a woman, the more you can get her to talk about things that are important to her, what her concerns are, her doubts, her questions, her experiences before, and you validate. You say, I hear you, I understand that. And so many times you might give an example, a story to validate that perspective. That builds trust. And then she will be your client. She will depend on you. That's success. Back in the 90s, when my Men Are From Mars was coming out and so big, many of the banks hired me as a consultant. How can you get women to come to our bank? And then suddenly you'll see in the 90s, the big promo out there was, we want a personal relationship with you. We understand where you're coming from. We're here for you. You weren't just bragging about how much business we have. We got $38 billion in this, and we built this, and we've done that. You didn't see that so much anymore. That impresses men a lot. But what impresses women is, I care, we care, personalized relationship, we listen, we understand, we hear, we honor your needs, we respect your needs, we'll provide the best for you. So you see, you're the same thing I'm teaching men to do for women. You do that same approach with anybody who's your client, who's depending on you for something. If that person is a man, you want to emphasize a bit more, less of him talking and a bit more of you talking about what you've done, what you can do, what you will do. And the objective for working with a man is always having the attitude of understanding men. Men are lazy, okay? If we could get you to do something for us and you convince me you have the skill to do it, I'll work with you. I'll go with you. Based on what you can do for me, then I don't have to do it. I can do other things. Whereas women, it's more of a personal relationship. They will build trust and work with you. Those are a few examples. Then we have examples. I wrote a whole book on this called Mars, Venus, and the Workplace. Now, Mars, Venus, and the Workplace did not do as well as all my other books because the workplace doesn't really care that much about personal relationships. They care more about getting the result. And they didn't really have the foresight to read the book to see that if you want better results, you have better relationships with your team, with the workplace, and with your clients. But it was also one of the impediments of Mars, Venus, and the Workplace to be part of the workplace is that the human resources in the workplace are graduates of college who've been taught that men and women are the same. And any acknowledgement that men and women are different is sexism. So we can't have sexism in the workplace. You know, this was all, and the irony is although the human resources spent a lot of money showing how men inappropriately touch women or interact with women, and at the same time, we should all be the same, okay? Instead of educating men that women really are different. And if you touch them on the butt, it means a lot different than if a woman touches a man on the butt. Okay, there's no man that's going to say sexual harassment because she touched me on the butt and gave me a pat. It's never going to happen. But if a man does to a woman, she can feel intimidated. She can feel afraid. She can feel afraid to say no. She feels like I have to say yes. What if he makes advances on me? It creates a lot of anxiety because she's a woman. Whereas for a man, it's kind of like, oh, that one felt good. Yeah, and maybe you want more. See, you have to teach that men and women are different. And the same people that were teaching, men, you shouldn't do this, she'll feel this way, they weren't explaining that not just sexually, but in 100 different ways, women are different. Then to a man, it becomes relevant. When you can give them a lot of examples of how women respond differently to situations, then a man can really absorb, some of these men who are sexist can really absorb that they're mistreating women. A lot of men just couldn't get it. They just thought this is all stupid stuff because they weren't given the bigger picture, which human resources and education and universities do not teach. They say we're all the same, and then they expect men to treat women in a different way than a man's tendency to do, and the way men would do in the past. And while I'm talking a little bit about sexual harassment, in the past, you gave a woman an inappropriate tap, she'd slap him and it'd be over. Now it's like give her an inappropriate tap and you've got a lawsuit. It's not just a slap. This is overreaction creates huge contempt between the sexes, huge misunderstanding, huge feelings of victimization, completely unnecessary if we had a better understanding of men and women's different sensitivities.
Thank you, John. John, we're now moving into the next segment. This is these are questions I've asked to everyone that's been on the stage so far, from Les Brown to actually about 7 or 8 people from The Secret. So now we can add one more to that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Marie Diamond's been here, Joe Vitale, you name it, Dr.
We're all
John
the
Amitini.
gang. You know, we're all part of a vacation club. We all go on vacations together.
Thank you so much, John. All right, so John, but this is the last segment, and the questions are really quick. I want to do a rapid fire because I want to try to get to the next section in a few minutes.
Okay.
So John, can one book change the world? Maybe 10 seconds.
Yeah, Men Are From Mars has transformed the world without a doubt.
Okay, brilliant. What role has networking played in your life? Maybe 10 seconds.
I'm not the best networker, but other people network for me, and it's a big help.
Thank you, John. John, next question is an extension of that. Is mentoring important? And who are some of your mentors?
Mentoring was the most important thing in my life. You know, for 9 years, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was my mentor, and he was world famous. He taught in every country in the world. Thousands of people every month were learning transcendental meditation. I became a head of his organization, his personal assistant, his main teacher. And that cultured me to come out into the world. Without that mentorship, I could never have achieved what I've accomplished.
What's his name again?
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was the founder of the Transcendental Meditation Movement, TM. Back in the 70s, it was the biggest deal.
Someone that I've interviewed here has told me said his name before, and I can't remember off the top of my head. So he was the biggest in that
biggest
time.
Influence on my life, without a doubt. I got to see that a man could be hugely powerful, influential, committed, purposeful, and yet be happy and have fun and always have good intention towards others. And I saw that, and that was it formed who I could be later in life.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John. John, and this might not be in your realm, but just if it is, I ask this everyone, what is your favorite financial books? And just to be clear, financial, I'm also packaging in investment, business books, money books. Like, have any favorites?
I read lots of books, but Think and Grow Rich is my favorite.
Think and Grow Rich. Okay, by Napoleon Hill.
And there's a new one out by a friend of mine who wrote it, and I think it's magnificent. And it's he's actually been a mentor for me in business quite a bit, in my business success, my business partner. And he wrote a book called You Too Can Think and Grow Rich. And it's based on his personal using of that book. His name is Rami El-Batwari, and that's a best-selling book as well.
Rami was here. We interviewed.
Rami's good.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot the connection between you and Rami. I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, so Rami, I interviewed him early last year, 2022, and also on Clubhouse. And yeah, and that's how I saw the pictures of you guys at Rami's house during his retreat last summer. That's right, because you were, I think he said he gave you, you gave him a lot of credit in his book. I read that book, actually. Can You Really Think and Grow Rich? You did the forward, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
He really did help you. Huh?
He was my business partner, and he helped Men Are From Mars become the biggest selling book in America.
Wow.
And we had second to Tony. Tony did the most influential, Tony Robbins did the most influential infomercial. We did the second most. We ran it for 6 months, for 6 years. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus infomercial. And after Men Are From Mars had become a bestseller, #1 for a couple of years, the infomercial companies all approached me with their deals. And then Rami approached me as well. And I told them all how I wanted the infomercial to go, which is I didn't want just a sell job. I wanted to actually teach my best ideas on that show. So it'd be like actual TV show where I'm sharing my ideas, not that you'll learn these ideas. I actually gave it away for free with testimonials. And we sold over 100 million in sales, selling $1,120 packages. So if you have 1 million people order, it's 100 million in income. And what we did is different from other people want to just take the money and run. All the money we made on the infomercial, we put back into more advertising time and more advertising time and more. So that was the foundation of a lot of the marketing for Men Are From Mars, was the TV shows that I did, the radio shows that I did. You got to have marketing. We didn't have internet, social media then, but what we had was infomercial time. So we took all the money that I made, I put back into buying more time. By even at times we were losing money, it didn't matter. It was my message to give to the world. I was making money over on the side with selling my books, so that was wonderful for me. People reading my books after watching the show. Ramey was helping people with finance based on my mailing list. They would sell finance packages to them. It was a win-win, and we could just keep putting my message out there. And none of the other infomercial companies would do that. So Ramey won the bid. You know,
He's
he
the
got
real
picked
deal,
on the
Ramey,
show.
right? Like
What?
business-wise, he knows his stuff. He's the
Yeah,
real
well,
deal.
his basic principle that people understand, I know Ramey very good. He says, look, you don't do business with somebody for you. You figure out how can I help them be successful? What I have to bring, how can I give to them what they want? So he wants to figure out what somebody needs, what they want, and then provide, I can do that for you in a way that will win for you and for me. So we were partners in that, and it was very successful. It still is. I still have a bunch of deals with Ramey, making tons of money on it. He's an amazing guy.
That's awesome. I'm going to invite him to the Clubhouse event too. He's really, really cool guy. All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. Next question. Do we need money to survive? Maybe 10 seconds.
Absolutely. You need money for happiness. You just, once you have it, it's not going to make you happier. Money to be happy, to survive, to be secure, to express yourself, to have freedom, all those things. Money is very, very important in our world for that. And then you'll be unhappy. You'll hit a plateau and it will start going down from there unless you have love. Love is the higher level of our need. It's a true need that we have that emerges as important as our need for security, as important as our need for food, as important as our need to breathe air. Love becomes that need. Once you have enough money, your basic needs are satisfied.
John, great response. Is finance necessary for everyone? Now, finance being the science behind managing money, making money, building wealth, all that stuff. Should everyone
absolutely.
learn?
You have to have education for it. I mean, boy, if I had the mentors I have now in finance a long time ago, I'd be so much even richer now. Not that I'm totally happy with my situation, but it could have been so much more if somebody told me how to invest my money appropriately and succeed with that. So there's a lot of good knowledge you guys give. Everybody needs to learn it. If you don't know it, you're just losing like 10% every year of what you do have. And so inflation just carries everything down. You want to build on that, on what is secure and what is safe and some risk. And that's what my advisors have helped me with. And I'm doing really well because of it.
Thank you, John. Just a few more questions left. Almost done. You'll like this one. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your purpose? So if you can state, is how important is having your purpose in business, and state your purpose. My purpose is.
Well, my purpose is to serve, support the needs of people to have happy, fulfilled relationships. Healthy, happy, and successful is my purpose, primarily through improving relationships. That's my mission, is to help people have more loving relationships and create a more loving world, because the world is not becoming more loving. We have to get that. We're all in the wrong direction. The world has not become more loving. There's more depression, there's more anxiety, there's more stress, there's more unhappiness, there's more division. And I bring it right back to the family home. That's how we learn to be loving human beings, is to grow up in a family home where mom loves dad and dad loves mom. And without that, you have a division within yourself. And that division manifests outward, where we can't hear other people's points of view. We can't have discussion. We can't handle differences. So we need to grow up in a safe womb, a cocoon that teaches us that you can be different and love each other. Differences are okay. We can learn to appreciate and trust each other, even though we're different. You learn that by growing up in a family. You cannot learn that without that. And that's what's happened in the world today, as the breakdown of relationships between mom and dad who made the baby.
And having a purpose in business, you would say, is important, correct?
Having a purpose in business, there's two purposes in my business. I serve others because that's my higher purpose, but I also serve others to make money so I can have a relationship. It's very clear. People say, oh, I don't care about money. I care about money. I care about money so that I can provide the best for my wife and my children. And then from there, my motivation shifts. I have to continue doing that, but my motivation shifts to being of service for others in a meaningful way. And the meaning I have found in my life is I have a skill and a talent and education to help people improve communication and intimacy. So I keep focusing on that, even though I've written books on health Because if you don't have certain nutrition in your body, you can't be happy in your relationship, even if you have all my relationship skills. You're taking antidepressants, you're missing good nutrition, the kind of nutrition that will allow you to then have relationships to work. But if you can have all the best nutrition in the world, but if you don't have relationships, you're going to be depressed. You're going to become addicted. Relationships is an inherent natural need that we have to devote ourselves to another human being. And when you don't have that fulfilled, then you become overly dependent on other things that don't satisfy you. And that's why it's overly dependent. If you eat sugar, for example, I eat moderate amounts, but if you're dependent on sugar to be happy, at a certain point, you need more. It's like one cookie, then you have to have more. You have to have more. And then you become very selfish, me, rather than me and you, we. And you just can't, you're just going to go into a spiraling effect of selfishness and narcissism and all about me if you don't have somebody you're committed to in your life. And that's another value of marriage. Marriage takes it to the highest level, to where when you're having difficulties, you made this sacred commitment and you do what it takes to overcome it if it's possible. And that's where people need education, because so many times it's possible, they just don't know how to do it. We're not taught. We're just not taught. Historically, people stayed together because they were taught. They were taught how to have a relationship if the man's going to be the man and the woman's going to be the woman, and they stayed together. But once you get this consciousness that we have today, where man can be man and woman, you have this higher level of ecstasy and passion, and people want that passion. They get a glimpse of it due to the newness of a relationship. It will go away. And they foolishly think that it's going to be automatically come back again. It doesn't. Historically, people called that the honeymoon period. Yeah, that's going to go away, and it will go away unless you use the skills that I teach. This is a powerful message, one little simple thing. Most couples get the passion in the beginning, they lose it because the passion comes from high dopamine, which gets produced because there's a newness in the relationship that produces high dopamine. That newness will go away. But why does newness create passion? Newness stimulates testosterone in men and estrogen in women, and that's the passion. And you don't have to have newness to raise testosterone in men if women know how to communicate to a man. You don't have to have newness to stimulate high estrogen in a woman if you know how to communicate to a woman. Just being a good listener and help her with little things that say she's special and important and be monogamous, her estrogen levels will rise for a lifetime without there being the newness, because the newness will go away.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. John, 2 quick questions left, super quick. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why? Maybe new books and new movies?
I have 6 books in my head right now. I'm just having so much fun with making love and traveling and vacation and my kids. One of my daughters just had a baby, so I'm a grandfather.
Oh,
Writing a book is a lot of hard work. So, but I've got them in my head. I'm still working on them. I usually take 3 months to write a book. I take a year or so. Now it's taken 5 years. So I got 5 years of work of books in my head. It's just now having to get it out there. And part of what holds me back is this book over here, I think is the most meaningful book right now, which is Beyond Mars and Venus. When you have a book, you got to promote it. You got to be with it. And I still want people to get that message. That's an important one.
Thank you, John. Brilliant response. Last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world? If you could say my legacy is, can you finish that sentence?
Well, great grandfather, great father, great husband, and the author of Men From Mars, improving relationships in the world.
Thank you, John. John, I want to conclude. I want to thank you so much. Honored to have you here, brother. We learned so much about you today. This conversation is fascinating, and you can be applied to so many levels. I'm sure we can probably break this out to an interview a day for 3+ hours for the next months or so, because there's just so much conversation worthwhile here. So, but before I conclude, John, I want to leave the floor for you. Any last minute thoughts? The floor is yours, John.
Well, I think we covered a lot today. I just want people to remember that they have the potential to have better relationships if they haven't. It's usually because we're missing an understanding that's necessary in our modern world that wasn't available to us in the past. Just knowing what our parents knew is not enough. Knowing what you hear, you see all these people having bad relationships. It's not that we're bad people or we can't do it. We just haven't been taught how to communicate and support the female side and the male side. And we covered it in many, many different ways, but hope is possible. It really is possible. I see people, I'll be teaching a weekend course and everybody in the course will say, my life is transformed. This is amazing. And they come back again and again. They love it. And it's not a, you learn it and it's done. It's a learning process. Everything is a learning process. There's bumps in the road. Every idea I've shared today, there's always going to be a yes, but, and then there's a wonderful explanation why it's still true and how you have to adapt around the truth. We can make our dreams come true. It is possible. Understanding the differences between men and women is one aspect of what I teach to keep our hearts open. It's not the only, but it's one, and we talked about it. That's why I have all these other books. I have a wonderful website, marsvenus.com. We list all the books, little overviews of the books. My daughter is sort of my legacy. She's taken over. She's, happily married 10 years. She's got a child. She's like a bigger expert than me. I encourage all the women listening.
What's her name, John? What's her name?
Lauren Gray at
Lauren Gray.
marsvenus.com. And she's created these video courses for women, and we've got a lot of really short blogs for women with explanations and processes. But the recent one we finished, I edit them with her. She won't have one page go by without me reading it and saying, that's okay, and tell me more, and let's discuss that. So a part of our relationship is discussing these ideas as she's taken them and evolved them into relationships, expressing them a little differently than I would. And we just finished a year and a half working on a book, a workshop with exercises and everything online called Understanding Men. So important for women to understand men, understand what men don't know about you, understand what you don't know about men, understanding how to bring out the best in men. It's an amazing class with, as I mentioned, lots of workshops and exercises and things to do and practical application for people who are dating, for people who are single, people in relationships, just so helpful. I mainly focus on women courses because men don't buy courses, evidently, at my website. They want it for free, but they do buy my books. Interesting. More men buy my books than women now. So it's interesting, but if you just go right to marsvenus.com, there's even a free course, a little short course that we have for single people, for couples, for dating, for married couples, for men only, for women only. Those are all courses available right away free. And then we have our longer courses that you can purchase. So that's available there. The one that men do buy is my course called Secrets of Great Sex. They like that one, and women like it as well. But I think it's just, we need to have good instruction when it comes to sex. There's a lot of things like we don't understand psychologically about men and women. So many great tips I give about great sex. I shared a few today. I think it's the most important thing for men to remember. Instead of thinking, how can I have more pleasure in sex? Also for women, because see, sex is turned into having sex with robots. Okay, you got tools, you got this, you got vibrators, you got fantasy.
That's another episode.
Yeah, but see, I'm like, if you understand how to make love, you don't need any of that stuff, and then you have lasting attraction, lasting passion, because you're not dependent on robots to do it. You're dependent on you, and that as soon as the world is really going down a rabbit hole, once we get the 4D glasses and kids are just going to be mind blown having sex. And what that does, it overstimulates the receptor sites in the brain, so normal sex can't occur. It's all fantasy sex. A man's testosterone goes much higher on porn than he could ever go with a woman. And so basically, if he does that fantasy sex, the brain desensitizes. Now you're dependent upon fantasy, newness, dopamine to have your testosterone go up rather than a real woman. So the younger generation today can't sustain the attraction. Men can't sustain the erection with their girlfriends, with the same person. They have to go to a new and different. And then they go online. A real girl can't even do it more than a couple of times for him. He'll just lose that attraction. And then why do you want to marry somebody who you can't even have sex with? So we got to settle down here and realize there's poisons out there and not let those poisons get into our system. So again, you asked me what else I want to say. I always have so much more to say. So I'll finish up, but just letting people know.
John, we're going to get your information on social media. So you gave your website.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, John.
That's my message. When more knowledge, better communication, you can have a relationship beyond what you imagine now. I mean, my life is making love, and the joy of having a relationship is so beyond what I ever thought was possible. Being with a group for now, last 12 days on our Serengeti tour, people were just like, how do y'all do it? How do you do it? I've never seen a relationship. People can be so loving and so happy and so easy with each other. That's possible if we have these skills, and it takes work. Just like you want to make a lot of money, you got to work hard, and And then the money keeps just coming in. So I've worked hard. I did my work. And now the love just keeps coming in my relationship. I know I don't react to stuff. I don't get upset about stuff. I know how to get what I want. It's my wife now, she says, he controls me with no control. I have to be loving to him. We just get beyond this animal part of us that has to have it our way, but learn how to get our way by giving someone else their way. It's an art, and we can all learn it. It takes some practice, but it's possible with the right guidance.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Folks, definitely check out Dr. John Gray's book here, his books, I'm sorry, and his website. And he's coming to Clubhouse too. So we got him locked in for June 16th, my famous Dr. Finance Masterclass between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely come there live if you're there 2023, in case you're listening in the future. Other than that, folks, you're listening to Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. You've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. Check out drfinance.info for more information. Also, we're going to be posting this to YouTube and blasting it 20 plus major podcast directories. Also, folks, if you want to learn about finance, the necessity of finance, my first book wrote over 10 years ago as a university professor, the most important lessons in economics and finance. And then my final book in 2016, The Survival of the Richest, which is 500 plus page book. I have to take Dr. John Gray's approach and one day make a simplified book. I got it in my head. It's only gonna take a few months probably. But thank you, folks. Appreciate you. Again, check out Dr. John's books and his website as well. Dr. John, if you could wait for me in the green room, I appreciate you again for being here. Folks, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and comment. And we're going to see you on the next episode. Thanks again. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.